run this at 4:30, and I told Chris, I was like, listen, bud, we're not doing an hour and a half.
You know I had not looked at the schedule, right?
What?
I said I hadn't looked at the schedule. So
I would have told you because I know that you wouldn't have looked at the schedule. So I would have let you know. But he's like 12 games or more, right? And I said, yeah, but it's 11. It's an obvious, common mistake. Yeah, that's fine. I'm saying it's a common mistake because nobody knew that the game was a 4:30 game. So when you're scheduling it in advance.
Yeah, I didn't know we ever did an hour and a half anyway.
Well, we haven't had a 12 plus game slate in a long time.
Yeah.
And I think we did have a couple, and I was like, hey, listen, we could do 4:45.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, I don't think we're going to have a normal slate for the rest of the season from an injury standpoint.
Oh, no shit.
Makes for amazing betting opportunities, though. Wait till we get real close to the end of the season, and these lines are set for everyone to be in, and then you get bombshell news dropping every 25 minutes, and you can hit those before they go off the board.
I'd say that's the crazy thing is right now it's not even as bad as it's going to get.
No.
There's still a month of this left.
Dude, Clippers moved. That's why I urge, I promote so heavily set alerts and hit those because it's literally the best money-making opportunity in betting right now. The Clippers line moved from 9 to 3. So if you hit that at 9 before it went off the board, you're getting a 6-point swing on that game.
First thing I looked at when I started writing the deep dive today, I saw the Clippers were playing the Pistons. I'm like, you've got to be shitting me.
Yeah, there's some bad ones.
What's the over-under on how many more Clippers get ruled out between now and the time the game starts?
I'd say 0.5.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically Marcus Morris.
Right. But he doesn't have a Q tag yet, does he?
No, but the Clippers don't really.
Right, they don't care.
Those.
Nothing. But you can throw Odd Shopper in there, Jordan, sure. Yeah, toss it in. Go ahead. I got a solid read for that. So fucking hot in the office. Took my shorts or sweatpants and my sweatshirt off midstream yesterday. I'm surprised you didn't cut to me when I was doing that, Jordan. People saw what a mess I was from the waist down. Speak up. All right. Hey, hit that thumbs up, fellas. Oh, hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive. I'm Dave Loughran. At Lafayette_D. On the Twitters, LOUGHY_D. Joined by Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS. Bro, you know it's April, mid-April, when we start getting these type of nights, these type of games where not just random players, but big name players ruled out left and right throughout the day. And I know for a fact that writing the deep dive has got to be absolutely hellacious over the last month of the season.
Yeah, it's pretty tiring. It's just like, you obviously get used to it, but trying to not have to rewrite the entire article because it would just never get posted, but still incorporate information as it comes out, and then trying not to like miss stuff, because if you say like if you talk about some guy missing from the Nets, people are going to just assume that like all the news is accounted for, so you don't want to miss one guy that matters. So it takes some time.
It certainly does, but we got plenty of time today. Hour and 15 minutes to break an 11-gamer down. So we're happy to have you with us. Hit that thumbs up if you're just walking in the door. And more importantly, subscribe to the channel. Help us grow this channel. If you like free DFS content and you think we do a good job, it's greatly appreciated. Hit that notification bell as well if you want to know always when we go live. Let's jump into it. The first question, as always, initial thoughts on the slate. Is there any way, with the amount of big names that have been ruled out, that we avoid a stars and scrubs type build today?
I don't think so. And it's not even like, even if we didn't have all these guys ruled out, I would probably say that especially in tournaments and large field stuff, that you needed to find a way to do it, because you have Jokic missing Murray, you have Westbrook against the Kings, you have Doncic, you have Curry, you have Embiid. Like, there's so many pay up options tonight. It would be pretty surprising if one or two of these guys didn't put up a score that you kind of have to have. And then obviously there's a lot of value, Kawhi being out, George being out, but also Jimmy Butler being questionable. There's, Sexton and Garland are questionable on Cleveland. Harden and Durant are out. There's so many different spots that you can look to for value that it's really difficult, I think, to see how you don't end up going stars and scrubs tonight.
Yeah, I don't think it's avoidable whatsoever. But you know what? We'll work our way through it over the next hour 15, kicking it off with Cleveland and the Charlotte Hornets. So as you mentioned, Darius Garland and Colin Sexton are both questionable for this game. The Cleveland Cavaliers on the road right now, sitting at 3-point dogs, 212.5 total. The Charlotte Hornets, on the other hand, will get Terry Rozier back, but PJ Washington remains out. Of course, no LaMelo Ball for the season, no Gordon Hayward for the season. They've been pretty beat up by injuries, even guys like Malik Monk remaining sidelined. So it's not exactly close even to a full-strength Charlotte team. Let's kick it off with Cleveland. This whole backcourt situation, I'm assuming you have both Sexton and Garland in right now.
Yeah, I do right now.
Okay, so assuming they play, if that's the case, that means this team is essentially back to full strength for the first time in a very long time. Jared Allen and Larry Nance are back, right? Kevin Love is playing. They're all back if they play. If that's the case, is there anything that we can get to now that you have a much more crowded front court and a full strength backcourt?
I think if they both play, it's really difficult. I mean, Kevin Love at 6,400 coming off a game where he just played 31 minutes is sort of
encouraging.
Appealing. Yeah, and the minutes are appealing. But the thing is, like you said, you have Allen back, you have Nance back. Does Love still play 31 minutes, or does he come back down to like 27? And he's kind of at a price point where those extra minutes actually, do matter. But then also if Jared Allen plays, let's say 32 minutes, Love is probably playing definitely playing fewer minutes at center than he normally does. And so those minutes are most likely going to be less productive. So if everyone's healthy, especially in a game that should be pretty slow paced as well, Charlotte's been playing a lot slower without LaMelo Ball. Cleveland's been one of the slower teams for most of the season. I would have a really hard time prioritizing anything from Cleveland if everyone's healthy.
Is Hartenstein removed from the rotation entirely, or does he get a handful of minutes off the bench?
Right. Like I'm guessing he gets some backup minutes.
That's what I'm thinking. Even if it's like 8.
Right. I think it kind of depends on, do they play Nance at the 3 or not, which we've seen them do plenty this year. But if they were to say, no, we don't want to play him at the 3, then there's not really minutes for Hartenstein, I don't think.
All right. So yeah, I'm with you on Cleveland. It's just really tough. Let's play both scenarios out here. If the backcourt is dinged up and it's not at full strength, let's say one of Sexton or Garland is out, or both of them are out, how much is that going to open up? Now, the obvious question on a smaller slate would be, okay, like, let's get down to business. There's plenty here to talk about. But because we already have so much value that has popped up throughout other teams, how desirable would Cleveland be with some of these backup backcourt players?
Yeah, I really, and it sounds crazy. I don't know how much of a difference it would make because
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
like if Garland's out, Sexton looks better because his assist numbers go up. If Sexton's out, Garland looks better, Love looks better because there's more usage to go around. But it's not like they're really cheap, and it's not like they're likely to play a bunch more minutes. The only spot that I really see opening up, if both Garland and Sexton are out, you got 34 minutes last game from Dellavedova.
Delly, yeah, that's the only one.
And even that, I mean, 4K Dellavedova, yeah, if he's going to play 30 plus minutes, there's value there, but it's also not like Dellavedova is the most exciting guy.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I mean, listen, 34 minutes at 4K against Charlotte, I think you can do a lot worse than that. That's not something that I'd be terribly upset about, but it's not like he's a +1 per minute guy, even a 0.9 per minute guy. So I guess the point here is you're going to need 30 plus minutes from Delly at 4K.
Yeah, and it's important to keep in mind that, because, obviously you can look at the last game and he played 34 minutes. It is important to remember that Nance didn't play in that game and Allen didn't play in that game. And because they're willing to play Nance at the 3, or at least they have been earlier this season, there is at least the potential for them to kind of just make it so Delly doesn't play 34 minutes. And if you get even 26 or 27 minutes from Dellavedova, he might still end up being a good point per dollar value at 4K, but there's enough value on the slate that it's pretty unlikely he ends up being one of the top plays. So, obviously Garland and Sexton affect things, but in terms of prioritizing guys on the entire slate, like being one of the best plays, I don't really see how anyone ends up being in that situation here.
All right. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but this is the only other question I'll ask you, right? Damian Dotson is out, and then Dylan Windler hasn't played since March. Those are two backup players in the backcourt too. If one of Garland or Sexton was out, how many minutes do you give Delly? Because he played 34 minutes, but both of them were out last game.
Yeah, I'm assuming you would probably get something like 26 minutes, something like that.
Right. So you'd need to have both out. Anyway, let's talk about Charlotte. You're going to get Terry Rozier back. You won't have PJ Washington. We'll wait and see what James Borrego decides to do tonight. How do you approach the Charlotte Hornets?
Yeah, so I think he'll start one of the centers at center tonight. But, Rozier being back should most likely push Martin back to the bench. He was obviously one of the best values last night. I still think that he'll project as an okay point per dollar value, but nowhere near like he did last night, assuming he goes back to the bench. Rozier on FanDuel, his price tag looks pretty good. He's averaged about 36 minutes per game without Ball and without Hayward. On DraftKings, he's a lot more expensive, so more of just, a tournament only play for me there. Miles Bridges should play around 36 minutes again. He's like a 0.8 to 0.85 fantasy point per minute guy, so kind of just a last guy in, I think, a reasonable option. Jalen McDaniels kind of in the same boat. Rozier being back kind of just makes this whole team a lot less appealing because not only is he taking 36 minutes that we had to dish out to other people last night, but he also brings in, like a 26% usage rate. So he's taking looks away from Graham. He's taking minutes away from Martin. He's taking production at the very least away from Jalen McDaniels. So I think, you could still make a case for any of those four, but it's not quite as appealing as last night. Bismack Biyombo is kind of interesting to me. He played about 28 minutes against the Lakers. He played well. For the season, he's averaged 0.79 DraftKings points per minute and about 25 minutes per game in games that he has started. There's not a whole lot of confidence for me that he gets 28 minutes again, but he's also only 3,200 on DraftKings and 3,500 on FanDuel. So you could certainly do worse. Kind of like you said with Dellavedova. You could certainly, if Biyombo's starting, you could certainly do worse than taking a chance on a minimum salary center.
Yeah. So where are you at on McDaniels ownership right now, though, being that it's so high?
What's it at?
26%.
That seems pretty high. Because I think he's a good value, and this is DraftKings, I assume, because he's expensive.
DraftKings, yeah.
Yeah. At 4,700, I think he's a good value. I think that Rozier being back lowers his floor a bit because, going into yesterday, he was averaging about 30 minutes per game in his starts. It was really difficult to see how, barring foul trouble or injury, he wouldn't exceed 30 minutes yesterday. He ended up getting, 40 minutes. With Rozier back, I don't think you're getting 40 minutes from McDaniels. I think you're more likely to get 30 to 32. He's been productive. He's been more productive as a starter than he has overall this season, which is always concerning to me because it makes me think it's probably a small sample size thing. If you get 0.8 to 0.85 fantasy points per minute from a $4,700 McDaniels for 32 minutes, he's going to be a good point per dollar value, but kind of unlikely that he's the best value. So 26% seems kind of high, but at the same time, if you're contrarian somewhere else in your lineup, I wouldn't worry about it.
Anything else for Charlotte?
I don't think so.
All right, then let's move on to Brooklyn and Philadelphia. No Kevin Durant, no LaMarcus Aldridge, no Blake Griffin. Of course, no James Harden either. Kyrie Irving, though, not on the injury report. He's going to play. They're 8.5-point dogs, 225.5 total. Nicholas Claxton's getting a lot of ownership on DraftKings. He's $100 off minimum salary, so that's pretty significant. We can start there. And actually, let's start with Kyrie Irving, because Kyrie is going to have to do a lot tonight if they plan on staying competitive. And I don't necessarily look at this as a spot where, yeah, it's a tough matchup. I get that. But Kyrie's a killer. And I don't necessarily think he's incapable of putting up big numbers against the Philadelphia 76ers. They've given up huge games to guards this year. So keep that in mind. Even the last game, Luka still scored 32 and got blown out. So it's not like it's not like Kyrie is doomed to have a bad game today, especially given the insane usage I project them to have. Where are you at on him at a sub 10K price point?
Yeah, it's not that I think he's like doomed to not have a good game or that he can't have a good game. The concern I have is just that he's pretty close in salary to that next tier of guards that, even with Harden and Durant out, I think look a little bit better than Kyrie. Without those two on the floor this year, he's averaged 1.55 DraftKings points per minute, 35% usage rate, about a 45% assist percentage. Everything there looks great, but he's not that much less expensive than Luka Doncic, who averages more fantasy points than that regularly. Russell Westbrook, who is playing out of his mind and playing against the Kings. Steph Curry, who's playing without Oubre and Weissman. So the ownership ends up being a big deal to me. And right now we have Kyrie projected to be the 6th or 7th highest owned guy on DraftKings at 20%, a little bit higher owned than Westbrook, higher owned than Luka, higher owned than Jokic, higher owned than, basically every other pay up option on the slate. I don't really think that should be the case. I am concerned just because, as good as Kyrie is, this is the most efficient defense in the league. He is the only guy that they have to worry about too. That's a big deal to me. Like, you can put Ben Simmons on Kyrie without thinking twice about it. You can scheme to make it so Kyrie isn't the one that beats you. There's a lot the Sixers can do to make life difficult here. So I'd feel a lot better about going to Kyrie if the field shared the same concerns, or if we're projecting the field to share the same concerns I have, because I do think he has a very wide range of outcomes here. I think the floor is pretty low. I think the ceiling's extremely high, but there's also some other extremely high upside plays that are getting less ownership than Kyrie. So I think I'm a little more interested in the other pay up options, even though I do obviously think Kyrie is a good play. Yeah,
those are all fair points. I did mention something on the strategy show today that there was a lot of talk about it after the last Sixers game, that they actually gave Luka whatever he wanted and just made sure that no one else on the team did anything, because Porzingis didn't play. So Luka could go off and have a decent game, a big game even, and they still win by double digits, which they did. Now, the only difference here is they were giving Luka whatever he wanted from three, because Luka's not a very good three-point shooter. If you try and give Kyrie whatever he wants from three, things can get dicey really quick.
Right. Yeah, that's totally different, like you said, because you want Luka's going to take shots. You want him taking three.
He had some awful three-point attempts. I tweeted it. He had two in a row. The second one, he airballed, and he just put his head down and sulked down the rest. It was really bad. But, he's amazing. It's just he's nowhere near Kyrie from a three-point range.
Yeah, he ended up 2 for 7 from three, 10 for 20 total from the field, 46 DraftKings points. And obviously you're not just saying Kyrie's going to do what Luka did. Luka was terrible in that game from a fantasy standpoint, for his salary. But it kind of just goes back to I think Kyrie can have a good game. I don't think that he should really be the highest owned out of this entire group.
All right. What about the rest of Brooklyn? Just given how many guys are out, it's not just Harden and KD, but LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin were getting minutes too. So how do we come to terms with this one?
Yeah, so you mentioned the ownership on Nicholas Claxton, and I think it makes sense. He's 3,100 on DraftKings, and he's over a 1 fantasy point per minute guy this year. He started yesterday against the Timberwolves. I'm not convinced he starts today just because it's such a brutal matchup with Embiid. But with Aldridge out and Griffin out, I still don't think, even if he comes off the bench and DeAndre Jordan starts, I think you're getting enough minutes from Claxton that he's going to be one of the better values that you can get to, just because he is such a productive player when he's out there. And there's only so many things that can go wrong at 3,100. It's really hard for someone that produces at the rate that he does to disappoint. So I'm fine getting to Claxton. There are obviously a couple of other really cheap centers like Biyombo you can go to if you want an ownership discount, but I think Claxton should get a lot of ownership. Joe Harris, Bruce Brown, both somewhat interesting to me just because they will need to do, at least a little bit more. Joe Harris is only 5K on FanDuel, which looks pretty good. He's averaged 0.83 DraftKings points per minute with Kyrie on the floor and without Harden and Durant this year. 0.93 DraftKings points per minute overall without Harden or Durant. So you should see a little bit at least of improved production from Harris, but you have to keep in mind too that it's a tough matchup. Same, goes for Bruce Brown, who's at about 0.8 fantasy points per minute without Durant or Harden. So, I could see getting to Harris, Brown. I could see getting to Jordan at 4K if he starts. But I think the priority here for me is Claxton and then, Kyrie, although I've said that I like a couple of other guys a little bit more if I can find the salary.
I'm going to have to, later in the show, if we have time, read you an email that someone sent about me. It is the greatest thing you will ever hear in your life. I promise you. They don't refer to me by my name because they're just simply too dumb to know how to figure out what people's names are. But they refer to me as Philly guy throughout the whole thing. Philli, right? And saying, hold on. I'm sorry. If you guys don't want to hear this, this is just past message about the Philly guy who pops up in basketball DFS now, who is on medication, I guess, since Carson Wentz left. And now he does what exactly? WINZE. Every time he is on medicine for himself, and people don't understand why he's on the shows. So really, why is this Philly man the key to a lot of your shows? And he doesn't know much. Don't look now, but the value bullshit. And seriously, who is the Philly guy who doesn't remember his last name? Besides, I was once an Eagles fan. That guy is garbage. You remember the bull crap I spill from loud noises? And that your show via Steve Carell, the Philly guy again, because he needs medical help. Is that not the greatest thing you've ever heard?
I think there were some unnecessary words in there, but I do agree with the overall point.
That I need medical help?
Yeah.
Nothing is spelled right. It's the greatest thing. I'm assuming I'm the Philly guy. Anyway,
I would hope so, but given the rest of that, I'm not really sure.
By the way, I'm not from Philly. I just have, like Philly sports teams. I live outside of Philly. So anything else for Brooklyn stand out to you?
No, I think that's about it. Like they still have enough bodies that there's not guys from like way down the depth chart that I'm expecting to play a ton of minutes here. You'll probably get more run for Landry Shamet, but that's not really a spot that I think is totally necessary here. So it's pretty much, Claxton, Irving, and then Harris, Jordan, Brown as secondary pieces, I think.
So I'm looking at the Sixers and Joel Embiid. I remembered his last name. Joel Embiid is at 10K on DraftKings. And you're looking at somebody who the last two games, don't be fooled by the minutes. He only played 3 quarters. This wasn't Doc Rivers limiting his minutes. They smoked both teams they faced, OKC. And by the way, he played the second of a back-to-back. And if that was close, he would have played the fourth quarter on the second of a back-to-back. I think he's good. I've been saying this since that game. I think Joel Embiid is fine. Maybe he doesn't play 37 in a close game, but I think he can get up to 34, 35, and that should be enough. He dropped 50 and 54 DraftKings points in 26 and 27 minutes in back-to-back games. And now you've got him going up against the Brooklyn front court that could just get absolutely eaten alive. So I've been waiting to ask you about him today. We've come so close to getting that huge low ownership game from Joel Embiid, but not playing the fourth quarter is so damaging to his production. He's still coming in at 8% today on DraftKings.
Yeah, I was really interested to see where the ownership would come in. Obviously, the first spot you're comparing him to is Nikola Jokic, but there's also so many other 10K guys or 11K guys somewhere in there that it is going to push down Embiid's ownership. It's also a pretty deep center position today, so I do like him in tournaments. I mean, it's a banged up Brooklyn team. There's obviously blowout risk here, but if this game's competitive for 4 quarters, Embiid is cheaper than he should be. The guy's averaged 1.65 DraftKings points per minute this year. Again, to put that in context, he's averaging 1/10 of a fantasy point per minute more on average this year than Kyrie Irving averages without Durant and without Harden on the floor. And he's got obviously a favorable matchup against this Brooklyn front court. So I do really like Embiid in tournaments. I think in a cash format, it's going to be hard to prioritize him just because there's other guys that project a little bit better at the top. But again, that leads to him having low ownership and I think being an excellent play in tournaments.
Yeah, no doubt. I was kind of hoping KD did play to keep this game more competitive. I'm not saying it can't stay competitive, but you got a spread that's nearing the double digits, which kind of sucks. But outside of Joel Embiid, can we get to anyone else for the Sixers?
I don't see much else. I guess the obligatory mention that Ben Simmons is 7K on FanDuel, but
other than 5K.
that, what'd you say?
Soon to be 5K.
Right, yeah, and it's not, again, in the context of the slate, it's fine, but there's a bunch of underpriced guys on FanDuel, so it's not even like it's a glaring value. But, yeah, it's just kind of, I don't see a whole lot else here. Obviously Harris or Simmons could have good games, but there's a lot of guys that I really like on the slate. I don't really want to start stretching into like, oh, this guy's a good NBA player. Maybe he'll do well.
Okay. I'm looking at this San Antonio and Toronto game, and I was actually, even with Toronto being banged up, I was a little surprised to see San Antonio laying 5.5 on the road, but I guess it makes sense. There's no Lowry, there's no Gary Trent, there's no Fred VanVleet, DeAndre Bembry's out, 221.5 total. We'll get to Toronto with all of this injury news, but first let's clear the deck on this San Antonio team, and then we'll move over to Toronto.
Yeah, so I think DeRozan stands out the most to me because he's a small forward on DraftKings, which is kind of a difficult position to fill. Shooting guard on FanDuel, nowhere near as strong as point guard is. DeRozan's been good, in his games without Aldridge. It feels like it's kind of gone overlooked because he's often priced pretty appropriately, and I think that's the case again tonight. But he has a 27% usage rate and a 33% assist percentage in the 20 or so games he's played without Aldridge and with Murray and Derek White this year. So, he's been productive there. He's getting a lot of opportunities. He's averaging 34 minutes per game in those games. So I do like DeRozan, but again, it's just kind of hard from a roster construction standpoint, I think, to land in that price range in a lot of builds. Same really can be said for Murray and Jakob Poeltl. Like, they obviously have upside at their price point. Toronto hasn't been very good defensively. They are shorthanded, so I expect them to play even worse. But there's just more. There's guys that are a lot more expensive and guys that are a lot cheaper that I think are just going to be easier to get in the lineup. So it kind of just makes them secondary options.
Okay. For Toronto, again, no Trent, no Lowry. VanVleet has no timetable for return. DeAndre Bembry is out. So for like the 8th time in 8 games, you're dealing with a hamstrung Toronto team that has a lot of missing pieces. And that means, once again, that Malachi Flynn is going to be pulling a ton of ownership. On DraftKings at 5,500, he is the highest projected owned player, 38% on an 11-game slate. On FanDuel, he is also the highest owned player at 44% at 5,300. So there's no better place to start than Malachi Flynn. He's not a +1 per minute guy, even with most of these players off the floor, but he's going to get the minutes today. There's no doubt. And you're removing Gary Trent as well. So you already had VanVleet and Lowry off. Now Bembry's out again. And Gary Trent, who'd actually been playing pretty solid offensive ball outside of any form of peripherals, is also sidelined. The points are going to have to come from somewhere, and Siakam can't shoulder the load all by himself.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I'm just like waiting for Flynn to fall off because I don't think he should keep producing as well as he has. He's produced better as a starter than he was off the bench. And part of that, or a lot of that, you can point to 2 steals per game, or 2+ steals per game.
But can't you point to a lot of it also the fact that he starts and half the team is out every time he starts? So he's pretty much like a bench player.
Well, right. But that's what I'm saying. Even like overall this season, he's averaged like 0.77 DraftKings points per minute. He shouldn't be averaging a minute per game without Lowry.
Gotcha. Yeah, you're right.
But he should be averaging more than his season-long average, but it shouldn't jump that much, especially when you look at, his usage is still sub 20%, assist percentage is around 25%, which is good. But the most important thing here is that he's still relatively inexpensive, and he pretty much has to play huge minutes with no Bembry, with no Trent, with no VanVleet, no Lowry. It's outside of injury, there's really no way that Flynn isn't playing a ton of minutes here, and that's what really matters. So I think that it really just comes back to the price point and the number of minutes he's going to play, that he's a very good value, even though I don't believe he continues to produce at quite the rate that he has been.
All right. So given the immense ownership, is this someone you're okay coming in underweight on?
Yeah. Just because you have to balance ownership and for individual players and the rest of your lineup. Like, if you look at the chance that Alex has of guys being in the optimal lineup, Flynn's optimal percentage is a lot lower than his ownership percentage, but he's still the 3rd highest guy on the slate in terms of optimal lineup percentage. So it comes down to, you don't have to be different in every position. We say that a lot. Flynn is a spot where he's popular enough where if he's not in your lineup, that's fine, because, if he fails, a lot of the field is dead. But you can make some very good lineups that still have that are still quality tournament lineups by playing Flynn and then taking a contrarian stance on a player that is not the 3rd highest that does not have the third highest chance of being in the optimal lineup tonight.
All right, so then let's work our way through the rest of the Toronto Raptors because there's plenty to talk about. And I guess you can tell us too, how much does their corrected pricing, given that so many of them have been getting additional minutes because of all these injuries, influence our decision-making tonight? Obviously, if you just look at ownership on this team, a lot of them are going to be very, very low owned as a result of inflated salaries given their additional run lately.
Yeah, they're not that priced up though. Like they're priced up at least to where they're not, slam dunk values, but I still think that there's, meat on the bone, for lack of a better phrase, to steal one of yours. For Pascal.
Gosh, we're stealing my phrases all morning, so feel free.
For Pascal Siakam, coming off of finally a good game yesterday, but a 28% usage rate, 21% assist percentage since last year without Van Vliet, Lowry, or Norman Powell on the floor. He's still, viable. You can still look to Boucher as a volatile tournament option. You can look to Stanley Johnson as long as he's low owned, as someone that potentially picks up some more minutes without Trent in there either. So there's, again, there's nothing that really stands out outside of Malachi Flynn, I don't think. But Siakam, Boucher, and Anunoby, I mean, these guys should all play enough minutes where they're okay secondary options.
All right, so I guess you're kind of right here. That's not that crazy when you're looking at how many players are out. How many minutes are you giving guys like Boucher tonight? Because we know OG is going to get a ton of run if this game's closed.
Yeah, OG should play a ton. Siakam should play a ton. The thing that's difficult with Boucher is that they have Khem Birch now, and he pretty clearly seems like a part of the rotation. He played 25 minutes yesterday to 23 and a half for Boucher. I said it, I think yesterday, it's harder to map out those games where Boucher plays 36 minutes now that Birch is there, because they seem more inclined to give Birch X amount of minutes than they are Aaron Baines, who they really couldn't care less. Boucher, I think on average probably plays 28 to 30 minutes, and you probably get 18 to 20 from Birch. But, there is the potential for that to be a little bit less. You could, I guess, see Boucher play the 4 a little bit, but I don't think that'll really be necessary. They still have Gillespie. They have Birch. They still have Siakam. They have Anunoby. They have Johnson that can play some minutes. So I don't anticipate that being the case.
Okay. Any other thoughts on Toronto?
No.
LA Clippers and Detroit. By the way, for all of you guys that jumped in around the 5 o'clock mark, we start the larger slates at 4:45, but welcome to the show. Hit that thumbs up if it's something you forgot to do. I know it wasn't intentional, but I'm just reminding you that it's very helpful in order to help us keep going here, keeping the lights on at Awesemo. Can't do it without the thumbs up and subscriptions. Clippers and Detroit, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George ruled out. Now, you and I were talking on the hot mics. Yes, we know it's hot before the shows about how insane it's going to be even going forward. Like we're not even at the peak when it comes to injury news affecting slates. And I talk to you guys about it all the time. And I know a lot of people have hit me up saying, Laffy, I started doing this and now I'm crushing betting because there's a leak in some of these books. There's holes that we can take advantage of. And one of those holes is when you set alerts, they're going to fix it. They're going to find a way to fix this eventually. They have to. But when you set alerts and get that news, you have about a minute to go place that bet before the line changes dramatically. For example, today, we saw the Clippers when we did the strategy show. The Clippers sat at -9. They're now 3-point favorites. So when that George and Kawhi news broke at exactly the same time, you go and hit that on one of those books, you're getting a 6-point swing once they remove it and put it back on the board. It's huge. Your cash out option alone is going to be a nice profit if you're on a book that offers cash out. So one better way to figure this out too is go to oddshopper.awesemo.com. Everything on there is free, from tracking your bets to setting alerts and notifications to checking out player props by just typing in a player's name. It's huge. And all of the offers we have for books that give you like $500 free bets and massive deposit bonuses by clicking on those links. All of that stuff totally free. Go there in the morning and familiarize yourself with which books are already offering the juiciest lines on these games so you can get the best swings, because shopping odds is long known to be the best way to be a long-term profitable bettor. Why not use that, already apply that to your game, and then when that news breaks, you're going to have a decent memory here. You'll know which spots to hit. And of course, not all of them are slow on the trigger, pulling them off the books, but the ones that are, Get in on that. Get these 6-point swings. There's going to be so many more of them down the pike as we head into late April. I mean, I'm telling you, wait till we get into the wild west of the NBA, and you're getting stars ruled out every 30 minutes. Set alerts, use that, and use oddschopper.awesemo.com to guide you in the morning, get a good idea of where all of that's coming from. All right, the Clippers. What are we doing with them? No Paul George, no Kawhi, no Serge Ibaka, no Pat Bev.
Yeah, I mean, looking like one of the clear top spots to go to value tonight. I mean, you can really make a case for almost any rotation player from this team. I think the starting points are Marcus Morris, Zubats, and Reggie Jackson. Jackson's averaged about 32 minutes per game in the games that he's played without George and without Kawhi this year. He's averaged 0.97 DraftKings points per minute without them on the floor. Assist percentage up at 27%, usage rate around 20%. He should get, 30 to 32 minutes again tonight. He's affordably priced, so he looks pretty good. Marcus Morris has a 25% usage rate without those guys on the floor. He most likely plays 30 plus minutes tonight, assuming we don't get any sort of late news on him, resting. As of now, obviously have to assume he's in. And then Zubats, the playing time's been, pretty inconsistent, but the more guys that you take out from the Clippers, the more likely it is that Zubats plays more minutes, because you're not going to, it's harder to have Morris playing minutes behind them. It's harder to have Patterson playing minutes behind him as opposed to behind Morris. So, I think there's a good chance that you get 30 minutes from Zubats. He's averaged 1.15 DraftKings points per minute without Kawhi or George on the floor. So those three guys all stand out to me as the priorities here. I also would point to Luke Kennard, who is 3,800 on FanDuel, 4,300 on DraftKings. He's likely to play more minutes with those guys out. I think he probably gets around 30 or at least 30, I should say. But he also has been much more productive. Not surprisingly, it's made a big difference for him. He's averaged over 0.8 DraftKings points per minute without Kawhi or George on the floor this year, compared to about 0.6 to 0.7 fantasy points per minute with one of them on the floor. So he gets a nice bump. Then you can start looking to guys like Terrence Mann, Nick Batum, maybe Rajon Rondo, even though I don't think it'll really be necessary. But I think Morris, Zubats, Jackson are the starting points here.
How many guys would you say, and I'm not asking you in the same lineup, because it doesn't feel like one of those nights where you have to run 4 guys from the same team in the same lineup. We got 11 games and a ton of value, but how many guys are you comfortable with rostering? Not same lineup, but just in general, how many are you comfortable rostering from the Clippers?
6.5. Rajon Rondo being the half.
Okay. 6 and for real, 6 and like actually 6+.
So assuming we're talking like, multiple lineups, like if I'm playing 150 lineups tonight, I would be surprised if I didn't have lineups that had Morris, Zubats, Jackson, Mann, Batum, Kennard, and probably Rondo. The reason I say half on Rondo is just because I don't really know how useful using that, kind of like last night. I don't know how useful taking 20 minutes of Rajon Rondo ends up being, but he is 3,500. He is likely to be a good point per dollar play, assuming he doesn't get ruled out or anything like that. He certainly could have a good game. So I think all 7 of those guys are viable.
Yeah, somebody mentioned to Josh and myself today, said, you didn't tell us what to do if both Kawhi and Paul George and Serge and Beverly are out. My answer was basically close your eyes and click on some Clippers, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying. You like some more than others, but all of them are at least somewhat viable.
Yeah, because none of these guys are terrible fantasy producers. Again, some are better than others. Like Marcus Morris should get, a fantasy point per minute, if not more. Zubats should get more than a fantasy point per minute. Jackson should be around a point per minute. Mann probably is like 0.85. Batum should be around 0.8. Kennard should be around 0.8. Rondo should be around 0.9. Like none of these guys are PJ Tucker getting more minutes. These are all guys that actually can, score the basketball or pick up assists or do something on the floor other than stand around. So it makes it so, obviously, again, in tournaments especially, you're not going to be you don't want to be just jamming 5 of these guys into your lineup on an 11 game slate. But it would be shocking if 1 or 2 Clippers don't outperform their salary tonight. It's just a matter of, landing on the right ones.
Right. Did you see Jordan Bell's back in the NBA?
Yeah, he's on the Wizards again.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
There was a time where he might have actually been thought of as should be a good player at some point.
Yeah, he was there. There was like that brief period because the Warriors got him for nothing. Yeah. And then there was that brief period where it was like, wow, the Bulls are idiots. Like, how did the Warriors get him for nothing? And then like as quickly as that happened, he was like no longer on a team.
Yeah. Why do I feel like one of them was with the Lakers too? And I can't remember his name. It was kind of similar to Jordan Bell.
Jordan Hill.
Jordan Hill, but he's he was around back in like 2014, 2015.
Yeah, and he was a first round pick. Like he was supposed to be good.
Remember the Manimal?
Kenneth Faried, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the man, from a fantasy standpoint, I'm blanking on who he reminds me of now. But Bobby Portis is like,
yeah, he's similar, but the Nuggets hated Faried so much. They would just Malone would just DNPCD
play Faried.
What's that?
I hated the Nuggets because I always wanted to play Faried.
Apparently, it was a front office thing too, though. I don't know, but yeah, Jordan Hill was the other one. All right, so let's talk about the Detroit Pistons. We have plenty of time because there's a bunch of games we're just not going to spend a ton of time on. I would imagine this is one of them. I've been harping, though, on the fact that Corey Joseph, since coming to the Pistons, right? It's the whole thing where you take a not great player, put him on a team that's even worse than he is with a lot of not good players around him, and he can actually be kind of decent. You're seeing the best per minute production of Corey Joseph's career. I'm not even kidding.
He's averaging 1.11 DraftKings
per
minute since he came to the Pistons.
Dude, I know.
The thing that I don't know is why the hell is he playing? Like, why is he such a big part of their rotation? What are they trying to gain from this?
I mean, one question that comes to mind is, have they just given up on Killian Hayes already? But I don't think that's the case. He played Joseph played 31 minutes last game.
I know. You have Saban Lee, you have Killian Hayes, Josh Jackson's at least young and has some sort of pedigree. Amadou Diallo, Frank Jackson has a better chance of being with this team long-term than Corey Joseph. So I don't know what they're doing. And from a fantasy standpoint, it does kind of concern me because I assume at some point over the next month, the wheels kind of fall off and they're just like, okay, Corey Joseph is cast aside now because it makes no sense to be playing him. But for right now, we can't really do anything other than look at how they've been utilizing him. He's been in the starting lineup. He's playing big minutes. He's playing well. He's cheap. Does he look like the best value on the slate? Probably not, but I certainly think he's one of the better players from Detroit based on what we've seen to this point.
And you got to admit, though, he's playing really well.
Yeah, he's playing well.
He had 18.
If the Pistons were in a position where they should care about winning games, I would understand why Corey Joseph was playing so much.
Look, I'm not going to try and attribute any motive to it because I have no idea.
Right.
But 18 and 13 last game,
Yeah, he's playing well.
24-7, 2 games before that. His assist numbers look fantastic. You're right. He's not the best value play, but he's a legitimately good value play if he's going to get another 30 minutes. You're talking about someone, okay, if I told you, forget about the name for a second, right? Try to be objective. Forget all about the name. As Josh and you always say, these guys are just numbers on a spreadsheet, right? If you just saw the numbers and saw a projected 30-plus minutes, you would be playing this guy like crazy at 4,700 if you took his Detroit Pistons per minute rates and the minutes that he's supposed to get going forward.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, obviously the Clippers should be a worse defensive team without most of their starters today too. So,
his last game was against the Clippers too.
Right. The only negative thing I really have to say about Corey Joseph, and it's the same negative thing I say about Mason Plumlee, it's the same negative thing I say to some extent about Jeremy Grant, is when you talk about a team like the Pistons that has 13 guys that they could use in any given game, they have no incentive to win. For the most part, the players are all equally bad. There's going to be a lack of consistency from game to game because they can just choose at any point to do something different. So there's always that risk, that added risk that you don't have when you talk about a better team or a team that, if let's say Corey Joseph were their first round pick and he's playing like this, you're going to feel really confident saying Corey Joseph plays a ton of minutes here. So you do have that risk, but again, you can't really do anything other than look at how they've been utilizing him. They've been playing him a lot. He's been playing really well. He's still cheap. I don't really, there's obvious risk, but I think you kind of have to like Corey Joseph at this price tag.
Yeah, I think you're right. Someone also said, I don't think, in chat, they said, I don't think he'll be able to do that again with Jeremy Grant back. But keep in mind, so much of this production is coming from assists, and Jeremy Grant is not their top facilitator. He's a scorer. Corey Joseph doesn't need to have a huge game scoring at 4,700. So
yeah, Corey Joseph has a 20% usage rate since joining the Pistons.
Right.
Even if that drops to 18 or 17%, as long as he keeps picking up assists like he has been, he's going to be fine. I guess the other risk to point to is when you're relying on someone that gets assists and he has to pass the ball to guys on the Pistons, there is a risk that he's going to just have some games where shots don't fall.
Yep, for sure. But at least it's a banged up Clippers team without three of their best defenders, right? Pat, Bev, George, and especially Kawhi.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt.
I mean, they shouldn't be anywhere near as efficient defensively.
No way.
He's played 65 minutes with Jeremy Grant on the floor. He has still averaged 0.94 DraftKings points per minute, 16.5% usage rate, 28.3% assist percentage.
Wow. What's his assist percentage just on the Pistons?
39
what?
and change.
So it's like borderline elite assist rate.
Yeah, which I mean to some extent is probably just running good, but
yeah, I'm sure he is. I'm gonna, while we're doing this, just curious. By the way, what was his first game with the Pistons? Do you know what the date was so I can look it up on NBA stats?
No, but you could just
go with yeah, you're right. Just filter Pistons. Yeah, what am I doing? Okay, New Orleans or anything else for Detroit?
Mason Plumlee is cheap enough where I think he has some appeal in tournaments, just assuming he's not going to get much ownership. But he doesn't really stand out in the context of the whole slate, I don't think.
All right, then talk to me about the New York Knicks and the New Orleans Pelicans. 219.5 total. Pelicans 3-point home favorites here. Lonzo doubtful, James Johnson questionable. New York's pretty relatively healthy outside of Mitchell Robinson. Can you get to anyone for the Knicks today?
I like Julius Randle here, which obviously kind of goes without saying, but it is a nice paced up spot for the Knicks. He's leading the league in minutes per game by like a full minute over the last month. It's not a bad matchup in terms of, defense either, going up against the Pelicans. And I think there's more than enough value to get to Randall. So I think he's an interesting option in tournaments as long as he's coming in relatively low owned. It was a pretty nice spot to be at last game when he was like 3% owned and scored almost 60 fantasy points. It's just a situation where he's never really going to project at the salary as like the best option. But because of that, you normally can get him at really low ownership, and he is a really high upside guy.
Corey Jones is averaging 10 potential assists and 6 assists per game. So he's running hot for sure.
Yeah. But also, I mean, that's 10, it's 10 potential assists in 24.8 minutes per game. So like the per 36 number it's still not, his assist percentage should come down, but he is averaging a pretty healthy amount of potential assists.
No doubt. All right. What about the Pels?
One of the least appealing spots on the slate, I think. Obviously you can make a case for Zion because he's really good, but pretty big pace down spot against a very slow Knicks team that also defends well. Zion's more, the thing that makes it difficult for me is, if I'm going to look to one of these power forwards as a pay up spot, you have Randall, who's less expensive. You have Sabonis, who's less expensive. So I think it's pretty tough to get to Zion as good as he is. He's the, I think, guy that I would get to first on the Pelicans. I think Zion is still a better play than Ingram, still a better play than Bledsoe, but it's really tough for me to get to anything here.
All right. So nothing. That makes it easy. Gives us a little bit of time to get through this for the next 32 minutes. Orlando and Chicago. The Orlando Magic, 9.5-point dogs, 214 total. Do we get to anything from a Magic team that just is literally running out players that some of these guys wouldn't even be key bench players on decent teams. So sifting through all this garbage, I'm sure they're great people, but just from a DFS standpoint, what do we like, if anything, today against Chicago?
Not a whole lot. I mean, they're 9.5-point dogs in a game that only has a 214.5-point total. The one spot that I am paying attention to, I am interested in, Mo Bamba's questionable tonight. Wendell Carter Jr. has averaged about 1.1 DraftKings points per minute and 27 minutes per game since joining Orlando. If Bamba is out, it's not that they don't have other bodies, but I think it very well could be a situation where, like, if Bamba's in, it's just tough to get more than 26 to 28 minutes from Carter because you're going to get 20 to 22 minutes from Bamba. If Bamba's out, you can just get 32, 33 minutes from Carter, which would make him a kind of interesting tournament option. Still just in the context of the slate, in the way I think roster construction is going to go, Carter wouldn't stand out as like my highest owned guy or anything, but he would easily be the guy I'm most interested in from Orlando, especially if Bamba sits.
Okay. Now, when you're looking at Chicago, they're healthy. They're almost entirely healthy right now. Even Garrett Temple is probable to play this one, and he hasn't played since March 29th. Zach LaVine's played very well alongside Vucevic. I mean, his per-minute rates are the best of the season by far, probably the best of his career. Of course, it's a much, much smaller sample, but he's played very, very solid basketball along Nikola Vucevic. Last I looked, he was like 1.5 fantasy points per minute, and he's probably still north of 1.4. Usage rate, assist rate, all of them looking beautifully. Is there any way that you're willing to pay a high 8K price point for him on such a large slate tonight?
Yeah, I mean, he's probably not getting in my first lineup, but I do think he obviously has a very high ceiling, and it's not a bad matchup here against the depleted Orlando team. He's got a 32% usage rate in the games he's played with Vooch. Assist percentage is north of 20%. He can get it done in a variety of ways. He's going to play 34, 35 minutes, most likely, assuming this game's competitive. So, I don't think he's a glaring value, but I do think he's a little bit underpriced, at least in terms of his ceiling. I have no issues with Levine here.
Okay. Where do we go with the rest of Chicago, if anywhere? I mean, you have Vooch, you have Thad, you have Satoransky, and pretty much a bunch of other players. I mean, Lauri Markkanen has surely fallen from grace very quickly on this Bulls team.
Yeah, he has. I think Vooch is obviously the next spot you look to. My concern is just the playing time has been down since joining Chicago, especially in games where Theis has been active. He's only averaged 30.9 minutes per game. The production's been fine at around 1.3 fantasy points per minute, and the salary is okay for that per minute production. It's a matchup he should have success in. It's just that I think it's tough to pay. It's tough to rely on Vooch if you are only going to get 30 to 32 minutes. If I felt more comfortable that he could get those 35 or 36 he played in Orlando, I'd feel better. But as is, kind of just ends up being a tournament only contrarian play for me. And then the other guy I think worth mentioning is Daniel Theis, who's only 3,600 on DraftKings. The concern that I have is that Garrett Temple coming back is going to affect this rotation, and we don't really know how. Like, we don't know if Troy Brown / Denzel Valentine just don't play minutes anymore. We don't know if they just add an extra body to the rotation. And the reason that's concerning is that Theis has been playing minutes alongside Vooch. And so if you're going to Vooch's backup, based on how many minutes Vooch plays, you need to feel confident that Theis is going to play a nice chunk of minutes next to him. So, are we going to keep getting 24 minutes from Theis, or is Theis going to start playing 18? If you get 24 minutes from Theis at 3,600, he's likely to be a good value. I just think that's really risky, and it also hurts that you can only roster him at center.
Lou Dort was just ruled out, or should I say Kawhi Leonard Jr.?
He might be better than Kawhi after yesterday.
Oh, don't do that. He had a huge game, though, and actually kept them competitive against a very good team.
Do you know what his usage rate is in games without Gilgeous-Alexander this year?
Let me take a guess. Just without SGA?
Yeah.
29%?
27.5.
Okay, so it's close.
Yeah.
It's high. It's not crazy, but he had a great game. And now he's out. Pogachevsky's also out. Or as someone called him today, Alexi Pogo Stick. So I'm going to run with that. I want to run with that one. It's just absurd. We've got 5 games to go here. Jordan Klein producing the show. What do you say we introduce for the Hall of Fame segment? Yeah. So we have people tweet us all the time with the Awesemo avatars. And sometimes we don't know what to do with that because we want to show it off. We want to brag for you guys. And when you guys win, it makes us happy. And we've had some big winners just over the past couple of days. So we created the Hall of Fame segment. And this is what you do to win a free month of Awesemo Plus, right? Everything included. It's like $100 value. If you download the avatar for Awesemo, use it as your avatar, win something or place top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. Sure. Not easy, not supposed to be, but it happens a lot. You get a free month of Awesemo Plus, $100 value. So you win a bunch of money. Right? Even if it's the quarter arcade too. It could be the quarter arcade, the dime, whatever that is, the jukebox. Doesn't matter what it is. You tweet at us. Make sure to mention me. Make sure to mention Awesemo Hall of Fame. Not only will you get your free month, but you will also get right here on the Hall of Fame, and you'll get your free month. So all of that stuff is great. You had Fab Five. Oh, you know what? Shit, there he is. He's in chat right now. Look at that. Good stuff. 15K. There he is right in chat. Fab 5 UOFM with the 416.8, $15,000 win. Beautiful stuff. And by the way, look at those Awesemo logos. How great is that? 4th place Awesemo avatar. Rinpack, our boy Rinpack, member of the Awesemo team. 5th place. He's always winning. Another Awesemo avatar. What's next, Jordan? Give me something else. So we had another one too. It's like a $2,300 win. Very solid. Of course, he came in directly behind our own Awesemo, Alex Baker himself. Got to feel good about that. All of these guys are using the same tools at awesemo.com. So that's big. Awesemo.com/join, by the way, if you want to get access to this stuff. Keep it moving, Jordan. Yeah, I hustled for it. $3,000 win right behind Alex Baker. I love seeing this stuff. And then the final one was a $600 win. And it wasn't, it's not your $20,000, $100,000 win, but that's still a big win to a lot of people. Killer Clowns, 77, huge score, large field tournament. So he took down 600 in a tournament that probably was, I don't even know. What's the 5 center? Do you know how much the entry is on that, Adam, on FanDuel?
No, I would guess 5 cents.
I'm assuming it's like very, very cheap. So the ROI on that's pretty awesome. That's the Hall of Fame segment for today. We'll keep adding this. So let us know when you win. Please let us know when you win. Get your free month, get added to the Hall of Fame board, and become a member of Awesemo.com if you haven't done so yet. Ownership, player projections, the boom bust tool, the big board, the lineup builder, the fantasy cruncher add-on, the top stacks tool for baseball and all the other sports, all of these built by the top DFS players in the world. And you see why. Tons of wins every single day. And join the community in the premium Slack chat. Join whatever channel, whatever sport you want. And of course, office hours where you got the pros answering your questions every day to help you better your game. All right, let's talk about the Pacers and the Houston Rockets. Houston Rockets are 4.5-point dogs. Pacers on the road, 234 total though. Fast-paced Pacers team. What do you like for the Pacers tonight in Houston?
So we have Miles Turner and McDermott questionable. If Turner is out, it's a bump for Sabonis. It's a slight bump for Brogdon as well. But we know Sabonis is more productive at center, so he would look even better than he already does. But he's now played 12 games with LeVert and with Brogdon. He's averaged 1.36 DraftKings points per minute. His salary is still pretty cheap given the number of minutes that you can expect Sabonis to play. He played 35.7 minutes last game. So it confirmed that the reason he played 30 minutes the game before had nothing to do with a minutes restriction. It was purely foul trouble. So we can feel confident in Sabonis's minutes. It's a good matchup, fast-paced Houston team that doesn't defend well. I think Sabonis looks like a great power forward option. I mean, he does everything well. And if Turner's out, it just looks even better. So he looks really good. Brogdon's still cheap, coming off of another big game last night, probably getting 35, 36 minutes from Brogdon. I think the point guard position is a little bit tougher, or a little bit deeper than the power forward position. So it's a little more difficult to prioritize Brogdon, but, still certainly happy with whatever amounts of Brogdon I can get to.
Yeah. And by the way, I forgot to add that to the injury headlines, but we just got news that Miles Turner is still questionable. So I actually thought that he was not going to play today. He's questionable for this one. Worth paying attention to as we draw closer to lock. Doug McDermott in this same team, is also questionable. So Miles Turner, Doug McDermott, both questionable for the Pacers. Is that all you have for Indy?
Yeah. Thinking about the entire slate, I do really like this game. I think it should be fast paced. I think, both teams struggle a bit defensively, but Sabonis and Brogdon are really the guys that stand out.
So on the strategy show today, we talk, by the way, Monday through Sunday, every day of the week. Your boy Josh and I are on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday too. If you want to hang out and see some irreverent stuff with some DFS content mixed in, it's pretty fun. We spent a lot of time on Kevin Porter today, and he was getting a lot higher ownership earlier on, but injury news breaks, things change. And that's why you got to always be up to date on ownership, because it will always be in flux throughout the day. He is down on DraftKings from like 21% earlier in the day to 7.8% now, 6,600. He played 40 minutes last game. And I've got to know where you stand on Kevin Porter, who has been an amazing reclamation project for Houston this season.
Yeah, he's been good. Obviously he hasn't always produced to the rate that he did when he first joined Houston and was kind of just looking like maybe he was like the best player in the league. But the minutes should be there. He's playing huge minutes. He's played, I think it's 4, I'm trying to find it in the deep dive. He's averaged 0.95 DraftKings points per minute. He's played 3 games this year alongside Wall and Christian Wood without Oladipo. It seems like it should be more, but apparently that's all it's been. 22.4% usage rate, 28.7% assist percentage, and 34.8 minutes per game. So everything looks good for him there. It really just comes down to it being kind of an awkward price point on the slate because there is so much value and so many good players to pay up for. I don't know how easy it'll be to fit him into lineups in that regard, but he does give you a really high ceiling. I think that he might actually be a little bit more valuable on FanDuel, where he's a small forward and you have to roster 2 guys at that pretty weak position. So, I think it's a good spot for Porter. I think it's an interesting spot. I don't think he stands out just relative to some other spots where teams are more banged up than Houston is, but that should also keep the ownership down, as you were mentioning.
And the ownership is down quite a bit. How many minutes are you giving him today?
34.
34. What about John Wall and specifically Christian Wood?
Yeah, I kind of feel similarly to them as I do to Porter. Obviously different price points, but there's guys at their positions that I can point to and say, yeah, I feel a little bit better about this guy. Like I would rather play this guy in cash, for example. But that just serves to lower ownership normally. And we've talked about it before with John Wall. He isn't the most efficient player, but when you look at the opportunities he gets in Houston's offense, there's not many guys at his price point that give you the same combination of usage and assist percentage. He's played 8 games with Wood, without Harden or Oladipo, 35.4% usage rate, 43.3% assist percentage. In the 3 games he's played with Porter, 31.8% usage rate, 34.8% assist percentage. So the rates drop off, but they're still very good for someone priced at $8,000 or $8,400 on FanDuel. And he's playing huge minutes as well, playing 35 or 36 minutes in competitive games. So I think he's got a very high ceiling. I just think that his lack of efficiency and the fact that he's on a pretty bad Houston team lowers his median projection a little bit, but it doesn't do anything to his ceiling. And the same can be said for Christian Wood. It's nice that you can roster him at power forward. He's relatively inexpensive, so being able to not play him at center helps out a lot. I think he's a very high upside play. I just think there's other guys that look a little bit better, but again, that just drives down ownership.
Okay. Anything else for Houston, or is that pretty much the gist of it?
Yeah, it's pretty much, liking the ceiling that you get from Wood, Wall, and Porter as contrarian options. I don't really see anything else from the Rockets.
This could end up being a surprisingly competitive, high-scoring game, too.
Yeah, they're only 4.5-point dogs. They're both top 10 in pace. Neither one defends particularly well. I think there's a good chance that there's a lot of fantasy points in this game. It just kind of comes down to the pricing, for the most part, being pretty efficient because you're not dealing with a lot of injuries.
I think so too. And we've said it a lot recently, but the Pacers actually make for a very good matchup recently, particularly over the last month. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about the Warriors and the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Warriors are 11-point favorites against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And you have Kelly Oubre out for this one. That's the only real piece of news that we have for the Warriors. Where are we going to, if anywhere, for Golden State tonight against an awful OKC team that's only going to get worse today without Lou Dort?
So we just got really important news that Kevin Love and Matthew Dellavedova remain on a minutes limit after playing 31 and 34 minutes last game. So take that for whatever it's worth. As far as Golden State goes, James.
How is it that Bickerstaff is always an interim coach and not a real head coach?
I don't know, because he's following in the footsteps of Steven Silas, Scott Brooks, and many others.
Yeah.
As far as Golden State, obviously you mentioned Oubre, James Wiseman out as well.
But he's done for the year.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what the starting lineup is for Golden State, because Kevon Looney started last game, played 31 minutes, which if he were to play, if you can feel confident he plays 30 minutes again, he actually projects as a pretty good value. But the problem is that in his starts this year, he's only averaged about 22 minutes per game. His starts without Wiseman, rather. And this is obviously an OKC front court that isn't as imposing as Denver's. So I don't know if you get as many minutes from Looney or if Golden State goes smaller. I think he's a really risky option. Juan Toscano-Anderson kind of in the same boat as far as, really cheap value that probably plays like 24 to 26 minutes and is okay. I think the guy that I'm really interested in here outside of Curry, who, we'll talk about in a minute, but Draymond Green's been much better without James Wiseman this year. His block rate just soars when Wiseman's not playing. His rebounding percentage increases. Minutes per game, trends up a little bit as well. Green, I think, looks really, really good here, especially on DraftKings at 6,900, but similarly priced on FanDuel as well. I like Draymond. And then obviously you kind of have to like Curry here. He's been a really high usage guy all season long, but without Oubre, without Wiseman, you get at least some bump in usage. He's at 39% in the 3 games he's played without Oubre. He's at about 35% in the games he's played without Wiseman this year. So I expect an even higher usage rate than normal for Curry. The only issue, again, is you're kind of splitting hairs trying to choose between him, Doncic, and Westbrook at the top.
Any top options from Golden State?
Curry and Draymond, I think.
Okay. So
I forgot Kent Bazemore played another 35 minutes last game, played 32 the game before that. He's getting expensive enough where he's kind of risky just because, for one, Steve Kerr isn't exactly known for having the most consistent rotations this year. And for two, he's getting expensive enough to where he's kind of priced where he should be. But I do think there's still some value on Kent Bazemore.
Who would you rather have? Say it's utility because they don't play the same position. Would you rather have Kent Bazemore or Corey Joseph? $100 off, projected for almost identical ownership.
I think they project similarly as well. I would lean toward Joseph, and the reason being, I think, like, if you were to play each game 100 times, Joseph takes over the Pistons offense in some way, whether it's assists or scoring or whatever, more often than Bazemore does. Like Green is always or almost always going to get more assists than Bazemore. Curry is probably 100 out of 100 times going to take more shots than Bazemore. You still have Wiggins there. There's just going to be more games where it's somehow the Corey Joseph show than the Kent Bazemore show.
Yeah, it's a big deal when you actually have a player like Corey Joseph bringing the ball up the court and initiating the offense. So that to me is pretty important. All right, let's go to the Thunder then. SGA, Al Horford, we already know. You haven't had them for a while. You won't have them for a while or ever if you're Al Horford. Alexei Pogochevsky or Alexei Pogostick out, and now Lou Dort out. So that's pretty significant. Isaiah Roby yesterday went from out to in. He's fine for today. Can we get to OKC? Is there anyone now with Lou Dort sideline, Pogochevsky out, that is at a reasonable enough price point, even though they're such a bad team, that we can rely on?
Whoa, Ken Burch is starting.
Oh, yeah?
So that's interesting because he's $3,300.
What do you think?
I think he's probably a pretty good value. Obviously there's risk there because we don't know, is he going to play one stint to open each half and then, Boucher is going to play the rest? Or is this Nick Nurse getting tired of Boucher again? We don't really know what it is, but he's cheap enough that, at the very least, he's comparable to, Nick Claxton, I think, and, Biyombo.
Absolutely.
So as far as OKC goes, I still don't think that even with Dort out, I don't think there's any one guy that stands out as like, a must play type of guy because they do still have a lot of bodies. But what I do think is interesting is Theo Maledon is only 40 or 5,400 on DraftKings. He's played 7 games without Gilgeous-Alexander and without Lou Dort this year. And the reason I mentioned Dort is because what we had talked about before, that Dort has a 27% usage rate without Gilgeous-Alexander. In those games without either of them, Theo Maledon has a 29% usage rate. He's averaged 0.96 DraftKings points per minute. He's obviously not the most efficient scorer, but that's a lot of usage for a guy at 5,400 in what should be a very fast-paced game. I definitely have interest in Theo Maledon here. You can look to Baisley and Roby as well. Svi, I assume, slides back into the starting lineup. But if I'm looking to one guy from OKC, I think it's Theo Maledon.
Okay. And hey, thanks for the super chat, Gene Kim. I missed it earlier. He said, just cleared 2K. Yeah, what's new? Not bad for making lineups while teaching. The top stacks tool is the best, maybe even better than the boom bust tool. Very happy to read that and accept the super chat. So appreciate it and congrats, Gene. All right. So do you have anything else on the OKC Thunder?
No.
We got 13 minutes to go and 3 games, which is plenty because a couple of these aren't all that impressive. Dallas and Memphis. Dallas Mavericks 3-point favorites, 225.5 total. Do you want to break this one down collectively? Feel free to just run with both sides of this game.
Yeah, I don't think it should take too long.
Nope.
Luka Doncic is obviously where you're starting in this game. He's one of the highest projected guys on the slate. Memphis is a nice pace up spot for Dallas, who's one of the slowest teams in the league. Memphis has been a solid defensive team all season long, and that's continued recently as well. So I don't think it's a great matchup in terms of efficiency, but Luka does so much, so well, rebounds really well, obviously can score, picks up a lot of assists, and is going to get more possessions and, more rebounding opportunities because of the pace Memphis plays at. So I think Luka, looks really good. Beyond that, it's tough to get to too much. Porzingis obviously has a ceiling, but is a little more expensive than I would like. Finney-Smith, Richardson, Brunson, Hardaway, these guys all get hurt by Luka taking up so many shots and then Porzingis being back in the lineup. Maxi Kleber's inexpensive for someone that's likely to play 30 minutes, but I think there's just better value on this slate that he's not somebody that I would be spending too much time on. So it's pretty much just Luka or bust for me, I think, from Dallas. From the Memphis side, not a whole lot stands out against a very slow Dallas team. You always can make a tournament case for Jonas Valanciunas just based on how many fantasy points per minute he produces. You can pretty much always make a case for Ja Morant just based on his usage rate and that he's really talented. But neither of these guys really stand out. Like, for example, at 7,100 on DraftKings, I would rather go to Brogdon than Morant, assuming you're not getting, a huge ownership discrepancy. 7,600 for Valanciunas, I think is fine, but there's a lot of center options. Just, 2 basically healthy teams again in a game that has a decent total, but isn't particularly likely to end up being a shootout.
All right. No Ja Morant today?
If you get to some, it's fine. Like, he would be probably the second guy I play for Memphis behind JoVel.
All right. Well, we have 2 games to go. One of them is Miami, Denver. There's not going to be a ton there. We'll get to that one, but we have plenty of time to spend on Washington, Sacramento. So let's dive into this one. I mentioned this morning that I thought we could see a 260 points in regulation from this one. At the time, the total was 236. The last time I looked, it was 242. So the total's already come up 6 points throughout the day. Washington laying 2 points in Sacramento. This is a fun one because these are two of the worst defenses. One of them is the worst defense in the league. One of them plays at the fastest pace, and the other plays at a top 10 pace. When you break all of this down, you'd be hard pressed to ask for a more fantasy friendly matchup. Maybe if like Beal was out and there were a bunch of injuries, it would get a little bit more exciting. But on the Sacramento side, Rashawn Holmes is doubtful, and Buddy Hield is questionable. He might not play, even though he's an Iron Man. Marvin Bagley's still out. There's a lot to talk about here. So let's kick it off with the Wizards. No other place to start than Westbrook and Beal.
Yeah, two, I think, of the top plays on the slate. Westbrook, it goes without saying at this point, he's posted a triple-double in 5 straight games, 9 of his last 10. Obviously, Beal was out for some of those, but he's averaging a triple-double when Beal plays this year as well. He's averaging over 1.5 fantasy points per minute in games with Beal. Now you get a Sacramento team that's been one of the most friendly fantasy matchups all season long. There's really just no reason for me not to look to Westbrook here. He's tied for second in minutes per game over the last month. Everything looks great. Rebounds well, scores enough, even though it's usually pretty inefficient, picks up a ton of assists. There's no lack of value on the slate. Absolutely love Westbrook. And then you get to Beal, who has struggled a bit since the All-Star break. He's dealing with an injury. We know that. He's missed a bunch of games. But the thing for Beal that really stands out to me is that his salary is dropped as a result of, one, his poor performance, and two, he basically was limited to 30 minutes in his first couple of games back. Last game, you had Scott Brooks say that Bradley Beal would be on a minutes limit. Beal proceeded to play 36.6 minutes on a typical Scott Brooks minutes limit. So seems to be back to normal. And it kind of just the risk reward equation here to me just ends up pointing towards Beal being a really good play, because at this point he's priced for a lower per minute. He's priced to be playing with an injury. He's priced to play less than 36 minutes. And at the very least, you're probably getting the minutes back, if not full health yet. So that on top of a great matchup here, I think Beal stands out as a great option right alongside Westbrook. And I have no issue playing them together, honestly, because this game should have so many points.
So what you're saying is even on an 11-game slate, you're not opposed to playing these guys alongside each other in lineups, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be the first thing that I do unless I'm just like stacking this game, in which case it's great. But I think Westbrook is one of the more underpriced players, even though he's 11K. I think Beal is one of the more underpriced players at 8,700. It would be different if they were priced where they should be. But, with these two guys, you're still spending, you're spending like 40% of your DraftKings salary cap, a little less. But you can very easily in this matchup get like 100 points there.
Hey, can we get these likes up a little bit? I got Josh coming up next. He won his first bet ever against me yesterday. It's pretty much a gimme. The last thing I need is to hear him talk about how he's the king of likes and we didn't do a good job on this show. So just do me that solid. Even if you don't like me, it would be really greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Okay. So on the Kings side.
Hang on. I got one more thing from the Wizards.
Please go ahead.
If you're playing large field tournaments and you want someone that's not going to have ownership that can absolutely win you the slate, don't sleep on Daniel Gafford at 3,400 on DraftKings. He has looked phenomenal with the Wizards. He fits what they're doing really, really well. The only concern really is his playing time. He was also on a minutes limit last game, but he still got up to 18 minutes. If he were to get to 20, 21 minutes here, it's a good spot. He's played 4 games with Washington so far, 1.46 DraftKings points per minute, 23.5% usage rate, 16.8% rebounding percentage. Obviously, I'm expecting that production to come down, but you're talking about a minimum salary guy that is just running the floor, getting lobs from Russell Westbrook, blocking shots, getting rebounds on a team that can't rebound. Daniel Gafford, as soon as he starts playing, as soon as he's fully healthy, because he had a scary ankle injury, as soon as he's fully healthy and getting like 24 minutes a game, he's going to be a 5K plus player. So rolling the dice on him at no ownership in a great matchup at 3,400, I think makes a lot of sense.
So Josh always forgets that he's logged into the Awesemo YouTube account. So he goes, don't listen to him, right? And I go, oh, real cool messaging from the company account against me. It's not cool. He goes, this isn't Josh. It's Tom Kennedy, the CEO. It's good stuff. I highly doubt it is. Maybe, I don't know. Point still stands. The more likes we get, the less Josh gets. And, if you're team Josh, that's okay. It's not a wise decision, at least not from a personality standpoint. What?
I said it's not a popular decision either.
Yeah, it's not a popular decision either. But the man does a decent job of getting likes, and for that, I pay him some respects. But that was pretty good, Josh. All right, Sacramento. Do you think Buddy Hield is active tonight?
50-50.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking more like 53-47. We know where Rashawn Holmes is not expected to play, so I think that's actually a great spot to start. Assuming he's out, he's doubtful right now. What can we expect to see? And then we'll get into Buddy Hield and how Mo Harkless plays into everything on a 10 p.m. game where we might not have this news even close to lock, which we very likely won't.
Yeah, so the center position here has the potential to be messy, but we did get – so Holmes missed the entire second half last game. Damian Jones, who I honestly had no idea was on the Kings until then, played – 18.6 minutes in the second half. Hassan Whiteside did not step on the floor. Me Too played like 6 minutes and a half, whatever 24 minus 18.6 is. So you have a minimum salary Damian Jones potentially playing a lot of minutes here. Even if he doesn't, even if he only plays like 20, let's say you get 20 from him, 16 from Metu and 12 from Whiteside, 20 minutes of Damian Jones at minimum salary against the Wizards is likely to be a pretty good point per dollar play anyway. It's a spot where I think it makes some sense to go to Jones. You can always late swap. Metu's the same price. Whiteside $600 more, and I assume most lineups are going to have multiple guys from this game, so you can move pieces around. But whoever starts at center here is going to look like a good value. If Hield is out, you're going to get Halliburton back in the starting lineup most likely. If Hield's in, Halliburton still probably plays 30 to 32 minutes. He looks like a much better value on FanDuel than on DraftKings. De'Aaron Fox is expensive, but he's fifth in the league in minutes per game over the last month. He's in a great spot here. He's someone that I think you could use, we mentioned that ownership that was going to Kyrie Irving. I think Kyrie is he's a better fantasy producer than Fox. Fox is undoubtedly in a better matchup than Irving is. I think that Fox is a perfectly fine, pivot in tournaments away from Kyrie, even though he's pretty expensive. Harrison Barnes is a pretty high floor play, but probably not really that useful in the sort of builds that you're getting with all the value that's open today. And then Mo Harkless played 30 plus minutes again last game, 34 against the Pelicans. Not a great fantasy producer, but he is cheap in a really good spot against the Wizards. Another value option that you can look to here, even though it's not really my favorite given how much other stuff there is.
Let's wrap up the Kings and close it out with Miami and Denver. If Buddy Hield and Rashawn Holmes are both out, and again, I don't even think we'll have the news on Buddy Hield. So is this even something you're worrying about?
The Hield part, not really, because I think you just kind of get Halliburton in the lineup, and then it's unlikely that it matters too much. It would give more minutes to Mo Harkless, which would make him look better, I guess. But outside of that, I'm not too concerned about the Hield part. The Holmes part matters because, if you get Damian Jones starting, if you get Whiteside starting, if you get Metu starting, one of those guys is going to project like a really good value. So the way I would approach it is just, I'm going to assume that Damian Jones starts since he played 18 and a half minutes in the second half. If it ends up not being Damian Jones, you're going to have guys from this game anyway. And it's not going to be that difficult to get to whichever one of the centers is starting.
Anything else on the Kings?
No, just play a lot of guys from this game.
All right. So on the strategy show, I said I really liked Miami +5 in Denver, especially with Jamal Murray done for the season, right? I really did. Now they're +6. Jimmy Butler's questionable. I'm thinking Jimmy Butler doesn't play, so I'm a little bit less confident in that than I was before. Dragic is out. Victor Oladipo is out. But Denver's blown 2 huge leads in back-to-back games. They just don't look very good recently. It's not a huge sample, but they haven't played that great. And now they lose Jamal Murray. That's a devastating blow to this team. Sure, it's great they got Aaron Gordon, and they've got a pretty healthy squad, but I'm going to be a little bit concerned, especially going up against Bam Adebayo for Jokic, who is a great defensive center. What do you like for Miami, assuming Butler's in, because we can't project him out yet?
Yeah, so I mean, if Butler's in, I think that Adebayo and Nunn both look okay, because Dragic being out means that Dragic and Oladipo both being out means that Nunn should get, or is likely to get, at least 28 to 30, maybe a little bit more. A tough matchup, a pretty unappealing game, but still a decent value there. And then I like Bam because it's just a situation where it's unlikely that we have Butler news before lock. And so Bam's averaged 1.25 fantasy points per minute with Butler this year, with Butler and without Dragic. There's a chance that Bam plays a couple more minutes than normal just to match up with Jokic as well. And then if you get Butler ruled out after lock, you're just guaranteed basically to have lower ownership on Adebayo than you would if Butler were, say, ruled out right now. So you kind of have that added benefit built in tournaments for Bam. But, again, it's more of just a tournament contrarian option looking to Bam or looking to Nunn, I think, if Butler's in.
Any other options for Miami that you're willing to get to today on this last game?
No, I mean, if Butler's out, obviously it makes Adebayo, Hero, Nunn all look better.
All right, so we are up against it. I'll throw it to you. The Denver Nuggets at home, 6-point favorites. No Jamal Murray, done for the season. Facundo Campazzo, is he on your plans tonight?
Yeah, I think he's fine. He started for Murray over that stretch where Murray was out for 4 games previously, was averaging about 28 minutes per game. The problem is that there's so many mouths to feed on Denver, and it's a tough matchup against Miami, that you could easily see Campazzo just kind of disappear because he's not the number 1 assist guy, even filling in for Murray. He's clearly not the highest usage guy, but he is inexpensive, so no real issues there. The spot that stands out to me though, and he's not getting much ownership, at least as of our last ownership update. Nikola Jokic, his assist numbers without Jamal Murray are ridiculously good. He in 6 games without Jamal Murray this year, he has over a 58% assist percentage.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so, on one hand, it's like, okay, that probably comes down a little bit, but I looked at the 4-game stretch that we had, 4 consecutive games that Murray missed earlier this month. And I compared Jokic's potential assists per 36 minutes in those games to his average for the season up to that point. In the 4 games that Murray missed, Jokic averaged 20.9 potential assists per 36 minutes. In the rest of the season leading up to those 4 games, he's averaged 13.7 potential assists per 36 minutes. Now keep in mind that Jokic has like a 40% assist percentage this year. So he's already getting a ton of assists, and then he nearly doubled his potential assists per 36 in those games without Murray. So I think Jokic, there is the potential for Jokic just to go to a completely different level here. He's averaged 1.84 DraftKings points per minute in the 6 games without Murray this year. Jokic, if he's not getting a lot of ownership, I love pairing him with Westbrook and then, filling out the rest of your lineup however you can.
All right, we really have to roll here. So anything else for Denver quickly?
Colin Sexton out for Cleveland, and no, nothing else really for Denver. It's just a tough matchup. Obviously everyone's ceiling gets a little bit higher without Murray, but they're all kind of priced where I think they should be for the most part, except for Jokic.
Still plenty of pending news. So don't go anywhere. Live before lock coming up right now. You've got Josh Engleman. You've got Greg Ehrenberg taking you all the way up till 7 Eastern. Don't go to the same stream. You don't have to click anything. You don't have to go anywhere. Whether you're on your phone, your laptop, your iPad, doesn't matter. Stick around. Hang out with those guys. Get some good info. Make some good lineups. We'll see you back here tomorrow in the deeper dive. Man, I need a massage. Jordan, you want to massage my shoulders?
What up,
Jordan? We're disappointed that you don't produce my shows anymore.
Yeah, even though it didn't work out for me. Good. And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Wednesday, April 14th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. And no matter what Lofty said on that last show, I was not Tom Kennedy, the CEO, I promise.
I missed something. I don't know what happened. I was trying to prepare my vast amounts of MLB and NBA lineups, and I'm just going to answer your question. I'm doing well today, but then beyond that, so before the show, as has become tradition, there's usually NBA news that happens, right before the show that throws off everything.
Yes.
We got a little bit of news, but nothing too significant. But since it's MLB and NBA season at the same time, I figured I'm going to make my MLB lineups early in the day because nothing could go wrong there. And then the entire Houston Astros tested positive for COVID and the game got rained out. So, I've just been updating those at the same time.
Well, that sounds like a miserable experience. We actually did get news at 6:02. Colin Sexton out for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Darius Garland will play, though. So we can talk through that a little bit. But first, before we do anything, hit that like button. I asked you guys to hold off on the likes before we got to the 6 p.m. window. I didn't need Laffy to get all of the credit. So if you can, just to start off live before lock, please hit that thumbs up. It helps us out a ton. Subscribe to the channel. That is also a big time help. I like the ego boost from the likes. If it had a subscriber count on the screen, I would like that ego boost as well, but it doesn't, unfortunately. So if you can subscribe, that just helps everyone at Awesemo.com. We're all working to the same goal on that one. The likes, those are for me. Anyway, let's talk through this Colin Sexton news right out of the gate, since the deeper dive guys didn't have a chance to touch on it. Who does this impact? Like, obviously, Garland's not going to be playing additional minutes. Everything that I've seen says Delly is still on a minutes limit. Who's picking up the minutes now for Colin Sexton being out?
Yeah, so I mean that happened just as we were starting. I didn't realize that he had been ruled out because it happened just as we were converting over the show. So I'm looking through it right now, but it's kind of tricky to figure out what to do with the Cleveland Cavaliers just because, Larry Nance and Jared Allen have both missed so much time. Then now they're coming back. What do they look like after so much time off? Are they going to play full minutes? Also, Kevin Love is in the mix. That was something that wasn't an issue for the Cleveland Cavaliers before we had these guys active. So I'm updating it right now. My gut feeling is there's nobody that I'm going to really like all that much from Cleveland. But that might change after I update my lineup. So I feel like that's going to be the case.
Does Broderick Thomas become a value play? Is Cedi Osman back in the rotation? It's a lot of guys that I don't really trust. They're overwhelmed with dudes that can play the 4 and the 5. They're pretty short on guys that can play the 1 and the 2. Have to assume that Broderick Thomas picks up at least a little bit of additional run. I don't really know who else it can be unless they're trying to run Okoro at the 2 and just getting bigger and bigger. I don't expect much out of Larry Nance. From everything that I've seen, his illness was not great, lost a lot of weight. I can't imagine he's just going to run out there and play 30 minutes, especially now that Kevin Love is also back. Can I assume Broderick Thomas is the flat minimum? Can he even matter?
So, I mean, with Garland and Sexton both out over the last 4 games, he's played 5 minutes, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, and 3 minutes. So
that's a fair point.
He's going to be, I guess he's going to be in the rotation, but I mean, maybe just to play, 2 or 3 minutes. I think it's going to be Dellavedova playing, minutes in the teens, and then Darius Garland probably playing his, 32, 34 minutes. And then, the guard, I guess they're going to play some Okoro at point guard. Cedi Osman maybe runs the point a little bit, but
Okoro at the 2 is the lineup. Garland, Okoro, Wade, Love, Allen. So that'll help.
All right. Well, let's see. I'm almost positive I'm going to get to nobody from Cleveland anyway, though.
Yeah. To me, it doesn't really open up anything additional. They're probably just going to throw additional minutes at a bunch of guys that don't matter all that much. Does Isaiah, they still got Isaiah Hartenstein on this team too, soaking up minutes at a position that they don't really need him to soak up. So I think it's probably much ado about nothing, unless, have you looked at any rates with Colin Sexton off the floor? Does Darius Garland become a world beater by any chance?
Well, here's the issue, though, is that even if we look at those numbers, they wouldn't account for Kevin Love, right? Because Kevin Love just returned, and he just started playing extended minutes at the same time that Garland and Sexton were both out. So to me, this is just a mess. It's not to say that one of these guys can't have a good game, but we've got a big slate here with a whole lot of value plays. I'd rather not take a shot in the dark with the Cleveland Cavaliers guys when I could take a shot in the dark with a million other situations that I feel a little bit better about. But yeah, the Cavs, I just read my lineups and there's nothing really popping up of significance from Cleveland.
As expected. By the way, Darius Garland, 25.9% usage rate with Colin Sexton off the floor. That is not all that much higher than his normal usage rate anyway. So it's not a bump that I think that we need to worry about. So we got a lot that we could actually look at. We've got about 51 minutes now to go until we get to lock. So let's start it off here. Let's take a lap through the guards, at least for right now. Guys like Malachi Flynn picking up a ton of ownership. Kyrie sneaking up the ownership ranks. Tyrese Halliburton. Terry Rozier now that he is in. Bradley Beal on FanDuel, at least at 8,500, picking up pretty heavy ownership. Who are some of the guards that stand out most to you today?
All right. So here's somebody that I think is going a little bit underrepresented that I'm curious for your thoughts on. Steph Curry, who I view as being somewhat similar of a play to Kyrie Irving. And we're kind of at the point of the season where I don't want to say narrative driven, except I'm starting to really weigh where teams are in the standings. And something that really stood out to me was after the Warriors game. I don't remember exactly what day it was, but it was a few days ago. Steph Curry played more minutes than he typically plays. And after the game, Steve Kerr was asked about why Curry checked in earlier in the fourth quarter and played more minutes. And he said that, paraphrasing here, that Steph asked him to. He said that we're at a point in the season, we need to win games. He said, I would like to play more minutes. Shorter rest for me in the third and fourth quarter. And you look at the last 5 games now for Curry, 37 minutes, 38 minutes, 35, 35, 36. The usage rate is insane. So I think we're getting to a point where Curry is shouldering a bigger load, both in terms of usage and minutes, because he's trying to push for the Warriors to make the playoffs. And also we have, Kelly Oubre outs that also opens up more usage. But everything to me points towards a really big finish to the season for Steph Curry until this team either makes it into the playoffs or gets eliminated.
So we got a lot of, well, maybe not a lot of potential pay up options at the guard spot. So speaking from a DK perspective, Russ at 11K, Luka at 10.9, Steph Curry at 10.5, and then we'll lump in Kyrie at 9.8, De'Aaron Fox at 9.6. Those are the 5 guys priced up at guard on DraftKings today. Is Steph your preferred pay up option at guard?
So I still have more exposure to Kyrie. Okay. But it's Steph and Kyrie are 1 and 2 for me.
Interesting. If I were playing on DraftKings tonight, my 2 preferred pay up options on DraftKings would be Russ and Luka. So we're really swinging it on the opposite direction there. Amazing, just truly amazing stuff from the 2 of us. Steph, in our last ownership update, 13% ownership. Kyrie 20. Any thoughts on the 7% ownership on Luka? Does that become at least a little appealing to you in terms of large field GPPs?
So I'm about even with the field on Luka. Okay. He's just had like a weird absence of upside lately. I'm not really sure what the case is. Maybe he's just worn down over the course of the season. But I mean, you look at the recent games for Luka, and how long has it been since he scored 60 fantasy points? It's been a month, right? So I don't know where the upside has gone, except it's hard for me to really get significant amount of exposure to Luka Doncic when there's all these other really strong pay up options, and the ceiling has not been there for him meaningfully at all for a very long time now.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you. The ceiling being what seems like gone has been very odd to me. I don't really know what to make of it. Dallas has been playing pretty well over the last month, plus 4.8 point differential in that time. So it's at least the team's not slumping, but it does seem like something is a little bit different for Luka. Not something that I would be taking into account aggressively. He has come down in just my overall model by, a few hundredths of a point just because his production has been down. But I'm still pretty interested in him. And given the ownership on DraftKings, that actually makes me a little bit more intrigued, just in comparison to Kyrie in particular, picking up the most ownership of all of those pay up options. I would rather just flip flop that to Luka, pay the extra, $1,000 or whatever it is and call it a day. Anybody that's picking up ownership actually, let's get ourselves out of the pay up options. Some of the guards that you're looking at that aren't necessarily 10K.
I just want to address really quick. We did get a super chat from our guy, Gene B. Kim, and it ties into the point guard position. He asked, is it Campazzo season? It isn't for me, but I'm kind of curious. What did you do with the point guard minutes for Denver now that there is no Jamal Murray in the mix?
Good eye on that. For some reason, it wasn't pinned to the top for me. I don't really know why. So sorry, Gene. Obviously, I would love to answer your questions. I'm really curious what they're going to do here. So I gave Campazzo 27 minutes. I gave Monty Morris 25 minutes for right now. And earlier in the day, we saw their ownership dramatically different. Right now for Denver, we've got Campazzo at essentially no ownership on FanDuel at 4,600, which I think is correct. No ownership for Monty Morris, so 5,500, which I think is correct. But on DK, it's a much different story. Campazzo is 3,700. Monty Morris is 3,800. One of those guys is 10% owned. The other isn't owned. I would rather just go to Monty Morris because I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that Monty Morris is the guy that soaks up the time when he is healthy enough to do so. I mentioned this on the strategy show, actually, and the process show earlier today. Of all of the 5-man groups that have played north of, I think it was 210 minutes. That was the amount of time that Murray, Barton, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Jokic played together. I wanted to see how good they had been as a 5-man group, but now that Murray's out, like what were they actually losing out on? The best point differential is a lineup that had Monty Morris at the point instead of having Aaron Gordon in that lineup in the entire league, which blew my mind. So I don't know how analytically focused the Denver Nuggets are, but given what that plus minus is, I have a sneaky suspicion that Monty Morris is the guy that's going to soak up more time down the line, or at least it would be to me, given that point differential so far.
Yeah, if these guys were min price, I think I'd feel differently about them. There's just so much value on the slate that I think I might have a couple of lineups with Monty Morris on my last run, but nothing really of significance. To answer Gene's question specifically, is it Campazzo season? No, not really. Definitely not on FanDuel.
No.
On DraftKings, like if you were playing him, I wouldn't say you have to take him out, but I'd rather play Monty Morris, like Josh said. And ultimately, I don't really want to play either of them all that much. There's other guys I'd rather get to. Yeah. I think there's enough value on the slate too that I don't think there's significant enough upside in Morris or Campazzo that we have to play either. And there's so many games tonight that I'm fine with just giving it a game and seeing like, all right, how is this going to shake out, right? The one thing I'm confident in, Jokic is going to have a bigger role. Jokic has really significant boosted rates when Murray's off the court this year. But Morris and Campazzo, I don't think either of them are close to necessary plays for this slate.
No, I would, given Campazzo's ownership, I would rather just go to obviously Morris at no ownership or $3,100 Rodney Hood now that a bunch of people are out for Toronto, I think could be an interesting move if you just want to get away from the Campazzo ownership. We also see Rondo down at the bottom, 3,500, also projected for around 10% ownership. Same story for Landry, Shamet at 3,700. All of those guys are all projected around 10. I think you can mix and match down there. Nobody really stands out. Rondo and Hood would be my actual preference, which doesn't feel like a sentence I would ever say, which is the worst. Anything in the mid tier at guard that you have your eye
on? I guess Malachi Flynn counts as mid tier, but everybody's on Malachi Flynn, so there's not really anything crazy to say. I think he's good chalk. You have to play him in cash games. He's a priority play in GPPs for me. Also, everybody's out for Toronto, and from what we've seen from him so far, he looks like a pretty solid NBA player who's produced good results as a starting point guard for Toronto. And I think they're just going to run him out there a ton to close the season because they're not really playing for anything else at this point. So decent matchup against the San Antonio Spurs. So Malachi Flynn's a good play for me. John Wall I'm waiting for the Miles Turner update because I do think that it has some significance on the Rockets side of the game also, beyond just what it does for guys like Sabonis also on Indiana side. But the Pacers defense has been miserable in the last few games with Miles Turner out. And if you look at the numbers for the year, their defensive rating dips quite a bit when he's off the court. So guys like John Wall, Christian Wood, I think that if there is no Miles Turner, like these guys benefit probably a lot more than people would realize. So I boosted up those guys both a little bit. So John Wall is somebody that I'm overweight to the field on.
I am right there with you. I think that John Wall stands out as one of the more under-owned plays of the day. I see chat asking, where's the play more, play less? 11-game slate prepping to host today. Getting that ready without having any news pop up was pretty difficult. But I can tell you very specifically, John Wall would be on the play more list on both sites. He is projected for 7% ownership on FanDuel, 14 on DK. I have him as my second best guard on the slate on DraftKings, ahead of every one of those pay up options that we mentioned before, only behind Malachi Flynn relative to salary. And it's just pretty easy to get to Malachi Flynn. He's going to fall into 35 plus minutes no matter what. However, I think you got to get to John Wall today. When he plays 36 minutes a game. They don't seem to be limiting him at all. So I really like that call. Any ownership you're seeing today that you think is a little wonky?
Let's see. From the guards, Flynn, I think that's warranted. Talked about, I thought Curry was a little bit low just based on how I'm perceiving him compared to other people. Reggie Jackson, Corey Joseph, both picking up a little bit of ownership, but I understand why there. I don't think there's anything really crazy that stands out to me. Do you see it any differently?
I don't totally agree with the Reggie Jackson and Corey Joseph ownership. Like I see Kevin Porter at 6,600. I think he should be more in that Reggie Jackson, Corey Joseph range, but I think that just goes to another piece of the Rockets that we're looking at. I do actually think that Kyrie is slightly overowned, but at the same time, his upside is dramatic. So like he couldn't break the slate. I don't think that his median projection makes him look all that good. And I think people are trying to buy a little bit too much, but at the same time, there aren't that many guys that are going to be able to do anything for Brooklyn. And if that game stays close, it is going to be on the back of Kyrie Irving, 100%.
I agree. My biggest concern with Kyrie is actually just that the Sixers just crush the Nets and that Kyrie doesn't have to play that much in the fourth quarter. And almost the only way for that to not happen, though, like you said, it has to be for Kyrie to have a big game. Like you look at the other pieces on the Nets, and Aldridge just played reasonably well recently. He's out. Obviously, Harden's out. Durant's out. But even if he played, it was probably going to be limited minutes. So the usage rate and everything is going to be massive for Kyrie. And this is a game that has a lot of importance. They're tied in the standings. The winner gets the tiebreaker. Right now, they're tied, not just for their head-to-head series. They're tied also. So this is a really important game. And I'm kind of surprised they didn't sit Durant yesterday to play him today.
I have a follow-up to that point. I want to hit on a couple news items that are coming out right now. 1, Lonzo Ball out, James Johnson available to play. 2, Dwight Howard out, probably irrelevant. Mo Bamba out. I do think that is pretty important for Wendell Carter Jr. We can dig into that in a little bit. And what I think is actually mildly interesting news that literally just broke, it has nothing to do with today's slate. Austin Rivers to sign with the Denver Nuggets. Clearly irrelevant in like they're not going to win the title scheme, but they needed to get a guard that can play in the NBA. I think that Austin Rivers is a decent pickup for them. So kudos to the Nugs.
So the way that could kind of be significant, though, there's no chance he plays today, right?
I can't imagine there is. I have no idea. It's just one quick note scrolling through. Let's see. He is already in Denver, likely to sign in the coming days, though. So no, 10-day contract.
All right, because I was going to say it's very easy to take Morris and Campazzo out of the player pool if he's active, but if he's not, then doesn't matter, irrelevant.
Well, let's talk through this Mo Bamba news because I think that's pretty relevant. In terms of center minutes, Wendell Carter Jr. has to be looking pretty good here. What does Orlando actually have at the end of their bench? Sorry, apologies to everybody. Keeping track of the 14th and 15th men on the Orlando Magic at this point in time. I'm pretty good at knowing who's on every single rotation, but this one's pretty. So Robert Franks would be the guy. Any Robert Franks interest?
So here's something else, though. Okeke is also questionable to play. So let's say that he's out. Like this team becomes so thin in the front court because they've got a million guards. But I mean, forwards, like you said, they have Robert Franks. I guess Dante Hall, who was on the Nets before, he could end up playing minutes. Wendell Carter Jr. And you know what's annoying about some of these spots is people are going to want to play Wendell Carter Jr. just because he's playing against his former team, and he just happens to be a really good play for other reasons. There's going to be people that just play Wendell Carter Jr. because going up against the Bulls, not realizing that he's a good play.
We thinking 30 minutes for Wendell Carter Jr. now?
I think north of that, especially if Okeke doesn't play.
And I do want to say this because I think it's actually relevant. Obviously, we have the two centers from Orlando and Chicago switching teams and going up against each other, which is kind of hilarious. But Nikola Vucevic is not a center that draws fouls. He never gets to the free throw line. So this is actually a pretty decent spot for Wendell Carter Jr. to be able to stay on the floor. Him getting into foul trouble, a little bit less likely in this spot because that is not really Vooch's MO. So I actually agree with you. I think north of 30 minutes is pretty easy. I don't think that we're going to be needing to fire up any Robert Franks tonight.
So by the way, I just pulled up. This is not a game that Mo Bamba missed. This is a game that Mo Bamba had to leave early with an illness. By the way, Mo Bamba leaves like 1 out of every 4 games that he plays in early at some point. But so the last game that Mo Bamba left early, this was about a week and a half ago. He ended up playing 13 minutes. Wendell Carter Jr. ended up playing 35 minutes in that game. Was this a game that went to... No, not a game that went to overtime. It's just the game that was really competitive between the Magic and the Nuggets randomly, where the Nuggets were favored by like 18 and a half points or something like that. But Wendell Carter Jr. ended up playing 35 minutes in that game. So I'm not going to give him 35, but Wendell Carter Jr. becomes a guy who I was not really thinking all that much about to a pretty strong play now.
Yeah, if I look at it right now, I gave him 31 just to give it the first look, and he grades out pretty well. Certainly a guy that you're going to want to get to. 6K on both sites. So I think he works, whether it's FanDuel or DraftKings. You don't really have to make anything work. We got a super chat from Brandon Wagner. Said, DK, last one in, DeJounte Murray or Brogdon?
Let's see. Who do I have for more fantasy points? I assume they're priced about the same.
They're both 7,100. My answer is Brogdon.
Also, we don't have the Turner news. Brogdon, Murray. I have them very close to each other. I have Murray by a little bit. I just like Murray's going up against all backups basically in Toronto at this point, which has me leaning a little bit towards him. It's very close though.
Alrighty, everybody. As we made our way through the guards, we're going to make our way through a couple other things, including the schedule for the rest of today. And I actually do have another show coming up for you guys. I didn't have one on Monday, but today I actually do. 8 p.m. Eastern Time, PGA Live Before Lock, Ben Ranzett, Eric Lindquist, breaking down this week's golf tournament. PGA Live Before Lock is a great show. Get your questions in. Guys will be hanging out in chat as well. It's a good show. It's a good time. You guys should go watch our boys break that one down. You could also follow along because PGA projections are free today. Perfect timing for a PGA Live Before Lock show. Since you guys are watching an NBA show currently, the NBA Big Board is free. Think of that as like the holistic rankings of Alex Baker for the day. You see guys like Mel Kiper have a big board for the NFL draft. This is the NBA Big Board for today's slate. MLB ownership is free. If you're trying to play MLB, I assume that locks in 34 minutes plus 39 minutes since MLB is weird and locks at 7:05, which is incredibly helpful in the transition from NBA to MLB when you rush to get it in at 7 and you think, oh yeah, I still have 5 more minutes. And NHL top stacks are free. Check out all of the free content at awesemo.com. And I'm assuming Nightbot will drop some links into chat as well. Another super chat from the real Jetton. You like Monty Morris today? Touched on that a little bit at the top of the show. I like him more than Campazzo if Campazzo is getting all of the ownership and Morris isn't, but I don't really care for either one of them in general.
Yeah, neither of them are really strong plays. Josh and I are pretty much in lockstep in this. If you have to roster one of them, Monty Morris. But for me, I'm not really prioritizing either of them. There's a lot of value plays on this slate, and I really have no clue what they're going to do in the absence of Jamal Murray. And by the way, if we want to attach a little bit of a narrative to this, I think just the fact that they signed a point guard so immediately after the injury in Austin Rivers, that's kind of a signal to me that they don't even know what they're going to do at the point guard position. Like they don't have a lean between Campazzo and Morris. I don't think they want it to be either of those guys. So it looks like they're going to bring somebody else in. I assume it's going to be all three of them playing for minutes. But I think going into the game, it's probably going to be they're going to ride the hot hand, right? It's going to be they're both going to play minutes. Whichever one of them plays better will play more down the stretch.
It honestly wouldn't surprise me if Austin Rivers didn't even see the floor at this point. They need a little bit of insurance. They got to sign somebody if he's only coming in on a 10-day. If it works, great. If it doesn't, right back out onto the scrap heap. All right, let's move to the forward side of the ball here. Some of the higher owned forwards today: Christian Wood on FanDuel, Jalen McDaniels on DraftKings. What else we got coming in? Harrison Barnes on FanDuel. Who else is near the top? Marcus Morris and Jalen McDaniels, the only two forwards north of 20%, which is kind of wild. On the FanDuel side, though, it's Wood, it's Bazemore, and it's Barnes. And if we round up, it's also Pascal Siakam. Where are you going at forward today?
Well, for one, I'm pretty stoked that Christian Wood is power forward eligibility on DraftKings again, because he didn't have that for a while. Yeah. And that actually drastically changes the outlook of my lineups today, because I really like Christian Wood. And I've liked Christian Wood a lot on recent slates on a points per dollar basis. But since he's only at center eligibility on DraftKings, I found it a little bit more difficult to get to him. Now that he's forward eligible, a lot easier to get to him. Alluded to it before that the status of Miles Turner is definitely going to have a little bit of an impact on how much I want to get to Christian Wood. But right now he's a pretty important play for me. I have Miles Turner out. I will lower Wood a little bit if we find out that Turner's playing. But as of right now, he is the forward I have the most exposure to.
I'm with you. He is not my highest ranked forward on DraftKings, but he is third, and third is a lot better than 14.6% ownership. He is my highest ranked forward on FanDuel by quite a bit, I might add, at 7,500. So No surprises here. You and I are in lockstep in Christian Wood, and I guess probably the Rockets in general at the rate that we've been talking about them so far. Who else are you looking at forward? I'm just going to hit you with a couple of the guys that are pretty highly ranked for me, at least, and I'll bounce between DK and FanDuel. So on DK, highest ranked forwards, Jalen McDaniels, Luka Doncic, Christian Wood, Siakam, Michael Porter Jr., Luke Kennard. Who else we got? Nick Claxton on FanDuel up top at 3,700. Looks pretty good to me. Sabonis, I'm happy to get to pretty much whether or not Turner is in or out, but really probably wouldn't change all that much for me one way or the other. Anunoby looks okay. Not a lot of guys left for Toronto. What other directions are you going outside of Christian Wood?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to get away from McDaniels. He's played so well over the last handful of games. The price has not gone up quite enough yet. And as long as everybody continues to be out for the Hornets, his minutes are here to stay. So I think that he's somebody who borderline must play in cash games on DraftKings. Definitely one of the stronger plays for me on the slate. Did you mention Marcus Morris there?
For me, no, I did not.
Okay, so I like Marcus Morris. We've got Kawhi and Paul George both out for the Clippers tonight. And if we look at the minutes that Marcus Morris has played lately, there's been bigger minutes going towards him. Last two games, 37 and 30 minutes. So without those two guys in there, the two all-stars for the Clippers, I have to assume that Marcus Morris is going to play a bunch of minutes and play a pretty significant role for them. It's a really easy matchup against the Clippers. I mean, it's for the Clippers against the Pistons. And I just don't know where else the usage would go today.
Yeah, so it's not as if I don't like him. I didn't want it to seem like I didn't. I have him as my 10th ranked forward for the slate. So that's, he's more than a little bit available to me. I didn't read all the way down to 10. This is basically the easiest way to describe it. With Pat Bev, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George off the floor, Marcus Morris with a 25% usage rate in 196 minutes for the Clips so far. Maybe I need to bump him up just a little bit from a usage perspective, because I got him to like 24. You know what? I actually feel pretty good about it. I gave him 32 minutes. Are you looking to go a little bit heavier than that?
Yes. Let me bring up I think I had 34 for him.
Okay.
Let me bring up the Clippers.
If I move him to 34, Morris moves up to my number 5 spot. By the way, guys, that is a perfect example for you guys to understand just how much a minute in minutes projections can swing rankings and swing how much you would get of someone. That moves Morris from 10th to 5th. That's a pretty big jump. And you would think, 2 minutes, what could that possibly do? It could change a lot.
And by the way, then we're pretty much in line then, because the guys that I have ahead of him right now, Christian Wood, McDaniels, Kent Bazemore, and then I have Marcus Morris 4th for me.
Okay. Soul Dope 1, 2, 3, 4 with the super chat says, "Sup fellas, FanDuel question." Here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Embiid and Harkless, Carter and Ingram.
I thought I was ready, and then I saw the names, and I was like, maybe I wasn't ready for that. These are a lot of guys that I don't really have all that much. Well, actually, so it's going to be Wendell Carter Jr. and Brandon Ingram, because now that I have my lineups updated for the Wendell Carter Jr. news, and he's somebody that I'm getting a fairly significant amount of exposure to. So just because of Mo Bamba's out, it's going to be the Carter side.
Yeah, I like Carter, and Ingram is going to do something. Mo Harkless can play 30 minutes and be an absolute ghost in that game. So I would just prefer to go to the Carter Ingram side. We did get starters for the Nets and for the Sixers. Sixers just same starting lineup as usual. For the Nets, Irving, Shamet, Harris, Green, DeAndre Jordan. Does that change anything for you with DeAndre Jordan starting at center? Which to me, not all that surprising.
I thought Claxton would start at center again.
I don't think they want Claxton out there picking up 2 fouls in 90 seconds.
He's so much better than DeAndre Jordan, though. I mean, he's better than Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, too, at this point. But, I mean, I just don't think they like him that much.
I just don't think that – I think this is like basically one of 2 matchups in the league where they would go to DeAndre Jordan instead of Claxton in this particular spot. I mean, I think that Nick Claxton is the better defensive center at this point. But Joel Embiid is like a different kind of guy.
Yeah, I liked Claxton. I mean, I'm still going to like Claxton as a value play, but I'm going to lower him a little bit now because I have to give him a little bit of less playing time.
Yeah, I had him at 24 minutes. I'm going to take 2 of those minutes away now that it is firmed up. And I have DeAndre Jordan at 22 minutes as well. I don't expect him to like close or anything, but he might have to. Again, if it's close, I don't think they're closing with Jeff Green at the 5, or else Joel Embiid is going to get a bucket every time down.
Yeah, so it's weird, right? Because the Sixers are favored in this game by, I think it was 8 points or 8.5 the last time we looked. So it's pretty reasonable to say the Sixers are going to be leading. But if the Sixers are leading by, say, 12 points, the Nets are kind of in this weird scenario where they need to get 3-point shooting on the court. So that would make me think maybe Jeff Green plays center. But then to your point also, I mean, just Joel Embiid would just massacre him. So I don't know what Nick Claxton has hit some corner threes recently, so maybe they could still use him to space the court. But yeah, that's weird because the Nets could be in a situation where they need floor spacing. But it just seems like they're going to lose this game.
Yeah, so that's also probably a more likely scenario. We also got the Clippers starting lineup for tonight: Reggie Jackson, Luke Kennard, Terrence Mann, Marcus Morris, Ivica Zubac. Anything stand out to you there from the Clippers lineup?
Not anything I wasn't expecting, but I think that Zubac is a solid center play today. I mentioned I like Marcus Morris. I'm underweight to the field now fairly significantly on Reggie Jackson. I don't know exactly why, but for some reason when I did the Magic update and got to a bunch more Michael Carter-Williams, that really lowered my exposure to Reggie Jackson. Maybe they're in I could see why. They're about in the same price range, so I guess some of the utility spot got taken up from Reggie Jackson to Michael Carter-Williams, to Wendell Carter Jr. So Reggie Jackson is somebody who I'm coming up pretty underweight to now.
I think Terrence Mann at 11% ownership on DraftKings is probably a little under-owned compared to what I'm seeing for the rest of this team. Like Kennard's getting the same ownership. I would rather have Terrence Mann than Kennard. We've got Reggie Jackson at 16% ownership on DraftKings. I would rather have Terrence Mann.
I think my preference is to not really roster either of them right now, though.
Also a very, very safe bet there. Got another super chat coming in from Al Butt. one T though, so I don't even know where to go with that. Anyway, Luka, Beal, and Patrick Williams, or Westbrook, Halliburton, and Slow-Mo, FanDuel GPP.
All right, I have the names in front of me, so I'm going to read them, and I have to digest this a little bit. I have to say, I don't like either of those combinations, Mr. Butt.
No, I don't.
It would be Westbrook.
I guess I do.
I would go towards the Westbrook, Halliburton, Kyle Anderson side. I don't have interest in Patrick Williams for this slate at all.
I would flip Patrick Williams into Daniel Tice and hope he continues to fall into 27 or 28 minutes. If I could. I guess I can't, right? They're different, small forward and power forward. That's not going to work. What positions? Yeah, he's small forward, right? Yeah, Patrick Williams, small forward. Who do I have that's ranked higher than Patrick Williams? You can talk me into go into Jalen Horde instead at small forward over Patrick Williams. I have those guys separated by about 2.5 points. But either way, I don't really like that third piece. I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with Westbrook, Halliburton if Hield ends up being out even better. And then Slow-Mo's just Slow-Mo.
Yeah, I said I prefer that. And the other thing also is that between you and I, we had different opinions on Luka today.
Yeah.
So that's also something that, I strongly prefer Westbrook to Luka for the slate.
That's fair. The Beal piece is interesting because Beal looks really good on FanDuel today.
Beal's looked good on. He's looked good on FanDuel for a little while now. He's a vastly different play on FanDuel versus DraftKings. Really favorable matchup against the Kings, only priced at 8,500. He is pretty popular, but for very good reason.
All right, let's see what else we've got going on. No additional news. Any guys at the forward spot that you see picking up ownership that you're a little surprised to see?
To me, Pascal Siakam is going a little bit too highly owned. Okay. I think it's not necessarily that he's bad from a points per dollar basis. It's just we have enough value opening up, and there's so many high end plays that to me, I'm not finding it all that difficult to get from Siakam up to the next level of player. To get from Siakam to Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, Russell Westbrook. Even though it's different positions, there's a little bit more flexibility on DraftKings. I'm not finding that all that difficult to do. So with an inflated price for Siakam, I think that he's going a little bit over-owned.
I think $5,100 Kent Bazemore on FanDuel is dramatically over-owned. He's the highest owned center or highest owned forward, small forward or power forward on FanDuel right now. I do not agree with that, and it's not even close.
How many minutes did you give him?
I gave him, that's a good question. Where are you hiding, Bazemore? 32.
I gave him a little. He played 35 minutes last game, so I gave him 34.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have Bazemore just by that. That's gonna have him with a couple more fantasy points.
That's fair. I mean, it's not that I don't like him. For him to be the most owned forward is pretty surprising to me. Like, I have him relative to salary 8 full fantasy points behind Christian Wood. Now, even if I adjust Wood down a little bit and give Bazemore 2 more minutes, I'm still taking Christian Wood by quite a bit. I would just get to a couple other guys as well. One other guy, like Caleb Martin getting 14% ownership on DraftKings is too high to me now. I don't really see, even at 3,100, there's enough value out there that seems to be wasted ownership, but maybe that's a little bit of a I don't know. Not something that I'd be looking at all. I would probably have 0.
I'm just going to refresh ownership because there's somebody who is really low owned that I liked a little bit before, actually more than a little bit, and I'm curious to see where he is. Let's see, where is he now?
Can I guess? No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is he not low owned anymore? Because that'll change it.
He's not super high owned, but no, he's not low owned.
Okay, well then that's good. That makes guessing a lot harder.
Yeah, it's Kem Birch. So Kem Birch, who's now starting for the Raptors. It seems like they really go out of their way to cut Chris Boucher's minutes at any turn that they possibly can. And now that we've gotten news that Kem Birch is starting, Kem Birch played 27 minutes last game. And I mean, he just signed with the Raptors, and first game plays 18 minutes, second game plays 25 minutes. Now, like, hey, Kem Birch is starting. I have a feeling he could play pretty significant amount of minutes here, if no other reason than because they want to get a look at him to see if he's going to be part of the team going forward. Kem Birch only 3,300 on DraftKings. I liked him a ton when he was only 2% owned before. I still think he's going under owned relative to what his price is right now and what I think his potential role could be. Kem Birch, I think, is one of the better value plays on DK.
We got one additional super chat coming in from Braden Vay Morin? Not entirely sure. He sent us 5 loonies. So that would be, he said, gents, thanks for the content. Taking down a couple big GPPs lately. Secondly, what are your thoughts on Hassan Whiteside tonight? I will let you take this one, and then I can give my thoughts if they're any different.
Not somebody I ever really thought about. So I understand why you might think of Hassan Whiteside just because of the injuries that the Kings are dealing with in the front court. No Rashawn Holmes. He's doubtful to play. No Marvin Bagley. But they've been so hesitant to ever give Whiteside big minutes at all. And I don't even think you have to play a center against this Washington team anyway. So, last game, Rashawn Holmes, 3 minutes. And that was, Hassan Whiteside, 3 minutes. So it's really hard for me to see that all of a sudden, these guys are going to be out and all of a sudden Whiteside's going to play massive minutes. The last time he played over 20 minutes was February 15th against the Nets. And the time before that was January 9th against the Blazers. And they've had guys out at other points in time this year. They just never give Whiteside the minutes.
So, one, they have 3 centers today that could potentially be playing those minutes. I don't know if any of them are good options today. They went to Damian Jones in the second half after Holmes got hurt. That would be my assumption for who they go with to start. But honestly, we have no idea. I laid this out on the strategy show, and I think this is really your only option. I don't think that there's any way that you can prioritize any one of those centers from the Kings right now. I would not be building a lineup thinking that was a good idea. However, if you are building lineups, I would be projecting Hassan Whiteside as the starter for one simple reason. And this is on DraftKings in particular. Hassan Whiteside is 3,600. Damian Jones is the flat minimum. Wait, sorry, I read off the wrong tally. Hassan Whiteside is 3,600. Damian Jones is the flat minimum 3K. Chimezie Metu is the flat minimum at 3K. I was reading FanDuel salaries. If you have the other guys and Hassan Whiteside's named the starter, you might not have the salary to get to Hassan Whiteside. But if you have Hassan Whiteside in there and Damian Jones is ruled the starter, you can pivot off of Hassan Whiteside directly to Damian Jones, and it's not going to be that big of an issue. But you could leave yourself pinched if Whiteside gets named the starter. Because if Hassan Whiteside gets named the starter at 9:45 tonight, I assume you're going to want Hassan Whiteside in at least some lineups at 3,600.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is a good point. I'm just trying to think. Here's part of the issue, though, it's something that becomes an issue a lot at this point of the season, is there's often late news that's going to impact the slate that is just hard to swap to. And one of the other issues, too, though, is if I'm reserving too many lineups to potentially play Whiteside, and if he doesn't start, there's nothing to go to at that point. Like I like Nikola Jokic as a play, but obviously, I wish that I had the ability to somehow just pivot from Whiteside to Jokic, but I think those lineups are just dead if you play Whiteside and he isn't starting, because there just aren't other games at that time slot.
Oh, I agree. I wouldn't want to be planning for any of these guys because I don't think it's a really good outlook. It's just a tough spot to be in. Just the only one that you should put into a lineup is Hassan Whiteside, because at the very least, if you are trying to do that lineup, you can still get to the other guys. You're not like totally drawing dead if you wanted to swap the other way. I don't really advocate for any of them. My assumption is Damian Jones plays and you don't want any one of the three guys.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't have Whiteside in my player pool today, but I don't have any of the Kings bigs in my player pool right now.
I don't think you should either. Jordan Reeves with the super chat: Siakam or Sabonis in FanDuel cash? It's a tough question. Siakam for me, but it's close.
Let's see. Is there a significant ownership difference between the two of them?
20 and 15. So no.
Siakam for me. Although if Turner's out, then I would go towards Sabonis.
Stanley Johnson a play or no?
That is a no for me.
Yeah, that is also a no for me. It's a no for me, dog. Any other thoughts on forwards before we finish this one off with some center discussion? 14 minutes to go before lock.
Let's see. I just uploaded the latest version of my lineup. So, we didn't talk about Draymond Green.
Here is the starting lineup for the Toronto Raptors. Are you ready? Please don't look first.
Okay, I'm not going to look.
Do you have a guess?
So I know two of the spots. I know one is going to be Malachi Flynn and one of them is going to be Khem Birch, because they announced earlier in the day that Khem Birch was going to be starting.
Yes. I'm sure you can guess two others pretty quickly.
Yeah, Anunoby and Siakam.
Sure.
Your reaction, I was thinking, are they resting somebody? Who's the other one? Is it Stanley Johnson? Because somebody just asked the question about him.
Chris Boucher.
Wait, so what is this lineup?
Malachi Flynn, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Chris Boucher, Khem Birch.
This is shades of the Knicks starting Zach Randolph and Eddie Curry together.
Yeah, something like that. Slightly different versions of that, but I see where you're going with it. I mean, you could have I would have never put that lineup together. So OG Anunoby is starting at the 2 tonight.
All right, so I'm gonna throw some a little bit of confirmation bias for me. I like Khem Birch more now. If they are this committed to just playing bigs, then I feel a little better about Boucher and his playing time also. But Khem Birch, I mean, if they're willing to play all three of these big men together, as long as he doesn't have foul trouble, Khem Birch could play over 30 minutes at close to min price on DK.
I feel like that's a bad sign for Freddie Gillespie's minutes today. Sorry, I just had to get a Freddie Gillespie joke in there.
It's bad for Stanley Johnson's minutes too, who we just got asked a question about.
Yeah, it certainly is. You could have gave me a lot of guesses before I landed on that 5-man combination of guys. I mean, I understand sort of why it's happening because most of these other guys stink, but those guys are, Siakam is playing a position that he shouldn't be playing. OG Anunoby is playing a position that he shouldn't be playing. You can make a case that Chris Boucher is as well. So that's a fun one.
Fun's one way to put it.
There you go. All right, I got to hit on two things before we finish this one off. First, the sponsor of this program, which I think Jordan has listed as Odd Shopper, which is giving me a slight pause that I copied this in incorrectly. Jordan, I'm going to look at you now. Is it not no house advantage? No? So blank means nothing? It doesn't carry down from that? Okay, never mind. So shout out to Odd Shopper, the best place that you can get odds for all of your sports betting needs. Confusing me here, Jordan, but I'm going to be good to go now that I don't even need the pre-run read. I could do this off the top of my head. Look, if you are trying to bet on sports, if you are lucky enough to live in a state that isn't North Carolina, you're in luck. We have a portal for it all. You can shop around and get the best lines, and that is going to save you and potentially win you the most money that you can get. Being able to get the best line that you can find is pivotal. It's essentially like getting overlay in a DFS tournament. It is going to save you across the board and in the long term. And we have it all lined out for you, whether that's props, just regular sides and totals. You can go either direction. You can set up notifications, track your bets, lots more. So go to oddshopper.awesemo.com, check all of that out. And shout out to No House Advantage for just being nice guys. I do want to give you the quarter plug as well, since it is in my sheet, and I'll read anything that comes up on the teleprompter. Finally, UFC 261, the numbers themselves, UFC 261. That is the promo code if you want to get an Awesemo Plus MMA monthly pass for 50% off. We've got Kamaru Usman, George Masvidal 2 coming up on April 24th. So you can get $14.95 for 30 days of our Awesemo Plus MMA package. That's projections, ownership, top fighters tool, lineup builder, Slack, and more. This offer will be good all the way through that Saturday, April 24th. I highly recommend you get in. That should be a good fight. I'm excited for it. I'm expecting Kamaru Usman to walk away again with his title. Greg, any thoughts?
No, I mean, the other advantage too is that if you sign up now, it's for a full month. So you get the week before UFC 261, but then also the couple cards after. So that's something I think is a pretty good setup, because before we were just doing weekly passes for some of these things, it was like, oh, well, it's only one DFS slate. So this encompasses 4 of them over the course of a month.
Unfortunately, we don't have projections for Ben Askren, Jake Paul, but go Ben Askren. All right, I've got a ton of super chats to hit on. You ready?
Yeah, I was just looking at a few of those right now. I'll read one right now because I'm not sure if it's going to be pinned on your thing or not. But
I got everything. I stopped
perfect.
the chat, so I'm all the way back at the top from Soul Dope. So this is the oldest one we have. I'm back with a bigger donation to my favorite live before Law Crew. Thoughts on DeAndre Jordan for FanDuel, and thoughts on Anunoby and players around him like Porter and Miles Bridges. Thoughts on DeAndre Jordan? We'll start there.
I still think that Nick Claxton is going to end up playing more minutes than DeAndre Jordan. Ultimately, I think DeAndre Jordan is going to have a lot of issues putting up fantasy production against Joel Embiid. The other thing also, if this was like a 4 or 5 game slate, then maybe I could talk myself into some DeAndre Jordan, but the center position is loaded today. So DeAndre Jordan, not a priority play for me whatsoever.
I agree.
The second part of the question, Anunoby to me is a very low priority play. Maybe a little more so on FanDuel that I could reason getting to him than on DraftKings, because his price has come down a little bit. I mean, compared to the other guys in his price range, I do prefer Anunoby, but I don't know what to make that starting lineup they're throwing out there. That could really hurt his rebounding numbers.
It really can. I do want to get this piece of news out. Chuma Okeke will be on a minutes restriction. That minutes restriction has not been publicized, so who the hell knows? And Dante Hall expected to make his Magic debut tonight. I'm going to assume that he will be the backup center potentially behind instead of Robert Franks. Was that the name? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's not important. Anyway, down to Darren Unger's super chat. FanDuel Cash, Westbrook, Halliburton, McDaniels, or Kyrie, Kennard, and Siakam.
All right. This is one of the ones I need all the names in front of me. It gets really hard to remember all of them. So
I agree.
have here Westbrook, Halliburton, McDaniels, or Kyrie, Kennard, Siakam. I think you absolutely have to roster Kyrie Irving in cash games tonight. So give me his side.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. What do you guys, this is from J. Prez Jefferson. What do you guys think about Rodney Hood? I liked him before when I thought that there was an outside chance he could start, but at the same time, I think he has to soak up some time. Flat minimum on FanDuel, 3,100 on DraftKings. There are worse plays.
Yeah, I don't have him in any lineups. So I'm not going to, I think there's better value plays. But yeah, on a points per dollar basis, he's not terrible. I didn't roster him though.
Yeah. He's in the group with Campazzo and Monty Morris and Rondo to me. Alan Rivas, thank you. Awesemo. You guys gave me a winning feeling I've never felt before. Listen up, fellas, get that money. Not even a question, just a super chat. Alan, I'm glad you got that winning feeling. What did he say? Ooh, 20K. Nice, man. Nice. That's a good winning feeling. Congratulations. Lillard time with the super chat said Rudy Gay on FanDuel. Unequivocally, no?
Yeah, that's not somebody that I've thought about at all today, and at all. That's pretty easy now.
Favorite centers today?
We haven't talked about centers yet, so that would be the next thing that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So for me right now, it is Khem Birch, actually, especially now that starting lineup is out. And like I said, a little bit of confirmation bias for me. I already like Khem Birch, and now I just see more reason to like him. Other guys, Christian Wood, who is center eligible on DraftKings, so he's somebody who I got to a lot, except I think more so because of also the power forward eligibility. But Nick Claxton's still a priority for me. Khem Birch, Ivica Zubac, and Wendell Carter Jr. Those are my most owned centers.
Top 3 centers for me on DK are Jokic, Wood, and Embiid. Khem Birch is slotting in that 4 spot. I'm assuming you prefer Birch to Claxton?
Yes.
Okay. I actually think that is really, really close because Claxton is a fantastic per minute performer. Khem Birch a little bit less so. So I think that where Khem Birch is going to get the minutes difference, Claxton sort of makes up for it in talent. That one gets a little squirrely for me. I would pay close attention to their ownership as well. On the FanDuel side, Jokic is at the top of the heap for me. Moses Brown would be number 2. Joel Embiid would be number 3.
I like Jokic. Like in theory, I have exposure to him, but not as much as I would have liked to, just because so much value is opened up at center. Like I said, like I have a bunch of exposure to Khem Birch, Claxton, Christian Wood at the center position, that I just ended up going a lot more value at center and paying up elsewhere.
I love Jokic at center on FanDuel. If he is half the ownership for Joel Embiid today with no Jamal Murray on the floor, where we've seen Jokic take a massive usage bump, his assist rate is through the roof. He can hang a hell of a number today. And like if Embiid fails, I don't have a ton of guys that are projected all that close to Nikola Vucevic, to Nikola Jokic. Ugh. Yuck. Jordan Reeves with the super chat. Curry or Jokic in FanDuel cash? That's got to be Curry.
Yeah, well, that's a really
it's not
weird.
Jokic.
Yeah, but that's all. It is Curry, but I mean, I'm just trying to think how the lineup construction happens. We're on FanDuel. You're comparing Curry versus Jokic, but yeah, it's easily Curry for me.
I mean, in theory, it shouldn't be Curry either. I'd be way more likely to be putting De'Aaron Fox in that lineup over Curry in a cash scenario. I mean, Curry would not be very high on my cash list on FanDuel today.
Same. The other thing also is, does that mean you're not playing Kyrie in cash, or does it mean you're playing Kyrie and Curry? I think that the cash combination on FanDuel should probably be Malachi Flynn and Kyrie Irving.
I think you can make a case it's Fox and Flynn. Fox and Kyrie are both owned the same. Fox $200 savings, and you get Fox in a really, really good matchup. No downside, whereas Kyrie Irving actually has some downside if that game gets out of hand.
Yeah, that's reasonable too. I prefer Kyrie, except the ownership is. I mean, Fox actually has a little bit more ownership, so yeah, Fox is fine. If you have the $300 to use, I'd still say go Kyrie over Fox, except the one thing, absolutely Malachi Flynn in cash on FanDuel though.
Yeah, there is no other way around that. If you don't have Malachi Flynn in a cash game on FanDuel, you should see if you could email them quickly and get them out of your cash game in the next 3 minutes, because you did it wrong. All right, well, we've got 3 minutes to go until lock. Any final thoughts that you didn't get in that you wanted to?
So pretty briefly, and then we moved on. So Draymond Green, one other forward / center on DraftKings that is making into my player pool, at least in the teens. In terms of exposure for me, a lot of the same reason that I liked Steph Curry is I think we're just starting to reach a point in the season for the Warriors where they need to make the playoffs. They're going to start playing the core guys more minutes. Last 3 games for Draymond Green, 33 minutes, 35 minutes, 37 minutes. So if he's going to play upwards of 35, 37 minutes again, I think that Draymond's a little bit underpriced.
We just got a note from a guy Adam in our premium Slack. It said Nick Nurse coached Khem Birch in the 2019 FIBA World Cup for Canada. I did not know that, but that is actually interesting information for, why Toronto, not obviously Toronto needed an additional big man since they put Aaron Baines out to pasture, but that actually fits pretty well if Nick Nurse has some familiarity with him.
Yeah. And he's also also from Canada. So there's a lot of ties there, which probably a lot of this is kind of nonsense that isn't significant, but it's stuff where it's like, hey, I already like Khem Birch. Let me find other reasons to also say I like Khem Birch.
Yeah, Nick Nurse is going to play to win basketball games. He's not trying to make friends out on the court. But
I'm actually not sure that part's true at this point in the season.
I mean in general, but like it is helpful. You know, it doesn't make me want to play him less. That much is true. 6:59 and 17 seconds, guys. If you don't have your lineups in yet, you should go ahead and hurry up and do that, because you can add them after 7 o'clock, but some of those guys might already be locked, and they're usually not all that nice about letting you fix your mistakes. So get those lineups in, or make sure you have a dummy lineup in that doesn't include the 7 o'clock games, which should be the number one thing that you do every single day. Build your lineup, leave it in as a dummy with only guys that play at 10 o'clock. It's the way to do it. I got nothing else, man. I got nothing else. It's a weird slate. I'm happy that it wasn't 12 games, but 11 is still a burden.
Yeah, I'm looking to see really quick if there's anybody who added us in the premium slate. We're at lock anyway, so all right, no need to kill time. I was going to say maybe there's a quick question we could answer.
No, we done. That's it. 7 p.m. Eastern time. I don't have anything else to add. All I could tell you guys is this. You should be back on the Awesemo.com YouTube channel watching the PGA Live Before Lock show tonight at 8 p.m. Greg, do you have anything that you want to plug?
No, I think just let's go Kem Birch, right? Let's just plug a big game from Kem Birch.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Good luck tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Please hit the like button on your way out the door. The more likes that we get, we can attribute that directly to Live Before Lock and not at all to the deeper dive. Thank you. Good luck. I'll see you guys in the morning for the process show, 6:30 a.m. Eastern time. Be there or don't be there.